So hey, what's up guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. So in this video we are going to see what if Harry Potter was raised in Kamar-Taj, which is in Doctor Strange. So this will be like Marvel and Harry Potter universe crossover. So please watch till end, and if you want more movies and videos like this, then please leave a like, share and subscribe. Also don't forget to check out my other videos on this channel. So let's jump right into the video.
The night Voldemort fell didn't sound like victory. It sounded like glass breaking somewhere far away in the universe, a crack that spidered through unseen walls, splitting one destiny into 100 possible disasters. Albus Dumbledore stood beneath a bruised London sky and watched Hagrid's massive silhouette lumber through the fog, a bundle tucked carefully against a coat the size of a sail. The child did not cry. He did not squirm. He simply breathed, small and steady, like a candle refusing to go out. "Are you certain," Professor McGonagall said tightly, "that this is wise?" Dumbledore didn't answer at once. He rarely did when the truth tasted like a compromise. Hagrid stepped closer, his boots heavy on cobblestone. His eyes were wet and furious and fearful all at once. "He's asleep," he rumbled, as if sleep was the only mercy left in the world. Poor little lad, he didn't even wake when James and Lily died. None of them said it. Names had power. Tonight, names were wounds. Dumbledore reached out and brushed 2 fingers across the blanket. And felt it. Not the lingering warmth of Lily's protection, that was there too, burning like an invisible sun around the child's skin, but something else beneath it, colder and sharper. Like a splinter lodged where it didn't belong. A faint pressure behind his eyes. A whisper, too quiet to be sound. McGonagall noticed his pause. "Albus." Dumbledore withdrew his hand as if he'd touched a cursed blade. He lifted his gaze to the row of neat houses beyond the street lamps, quiet, ordinary, safe. Privet Drive. The plan was clean, simple. Put the boy who lived somewhere Voldemort's followers would never think to look. A place protected by blood. A plan that had worked in his mind 1,000 times. And yet, the splinter under the boy's skin pulsed, once, like a warning bell. Dumbledore looked back at the sleeping face. The lightning scar wasn't fully formed yet. It was only a raw mark. A dark crimson line that curved like a question. The prophecy had spoken of power the Dark Lord knew not. But prophecies were always neat in hindsight. Reality was messy. Reality bled. "There are protections in place," Dumbledore said gently, as if gentleness could stitch this night back together. "Ancient enchantments. Blood wards. And neglect," McGonagall snapped. She caught herself, straightened. Swallowed. "Forgive me. I know you believe it necessary. But I cannot bear the thought of James and Lily's child growing up unloved." Hagrid made a sound that might. They've been agreement and might have been grief. Dumbledore's eyes didn't leave the baby. "Neither can I." Silence pressed around them. Then Dumbledore did something unexpected. He stepped away from Privet Drive. McGonagall blinked. "Albus, I have been arrogant," Dumbledore murmured. "Or, perhaps simply afraid of changing what I think must happen." He turned, cloak whispering, and the lamplight. H.T. caught the gleam of his half-moon spectacles. "There is another sanctuary," he said. Hagrid frowned. "Another, what now?" "A place that does not belong to our world alone," Dumbledore replied, voice lowering. "A place Voldemort's followers do not even know how to name." McGonagall's eyes narrowed, calculation sharp behind the worry. "You mean?" "Yes," Dumbledore said. "I mean them." Hagrid shifted the bundle protectively. "Professor, with respect, I don't fancy handing him over to any strangers." "Not after what happened." "They are not strangers," Dumbledore said. "Not to me." McGonagall's voice went quiet. "The masters of the mystic arts." Hagrid stared at her like she'd begun speaking gobbledygook. "The what?" Dumbledore placed a hand on Hagrid's arm. "Trust me." Hagrid's big hands tightened around the blanket. "I trust you, Professor. I don't want him used." "Nor do I," Dumbledore said softly. "That is precisely why Privet Drive no longer feels sufficient." He splinter under Harry's skin pulsed again, faintly. Like it agreed. London slept the way it always did, pretending the shadows weren't alive. Dumbledore did not apparate. Not this close to what he sought. Some doors were not meant to be forced open with wizarding shortcuts. Instead, he walked. A quiet old man beneath a quiet old sky, crossing streets where muggles never looked twice at Oddie. Ties because their minds slid off them like rain on stone. McGonagall followed, rigid and watchful. Hagrid followed, huge and protective. They reached a narrow street that did not feel narrow once. You stepped into it, like space itself folded politely, making room for something larger on the inside. A building stood there that should have been impossible to miss and yet was invisible to anyone who didn't belong. The Sanctum Sanctorum. Its windows were dark. Its door was older than London, older than brick and soot and empire. It felt like a boundary line between worlds. Hagrid swallowed. This place gives me the shivers. McGonagall's voice was controlled. If this is a mistake. It isn't, Dumbledore said. He raised his hand, not his wand, and tapped the door in a pattern. 3 soft knocks, 1 pause, 2 knocks. Then a final single knock. The air changed, not with the crack of apparition or the shimmer of disillusionment, but with the sensation of attention. Like something vast had turned its gaze toward them. The door opened without a sound. A man stood in the doorway. Not a wizard, not a muggle. Something, balanced, poised. He wore dark robes and carried no visible weapon. His eyes were sharp and tired and ancient in a way that had nothing to do with age. Albus, he said, like the name was both greeting and warning. It has been some time. Dumbledore inclined his head. Wong. McGonagall stiffened at the casual familiarity. Wong's gaze slid to the bundle in Hagrid's arms, and for the first time his calm faltered, just a fraction. So it's true. It is, Dumbledore said. Wong stepped aside. Come in. The instant they crossed the threshold, the smell of London faded. In its place came incense, old paper, cold stone, and something else, an almost metallic tang in the air. Like lightning had a scent. Hagrid looked around as if expecting the walls to move. Blimey. McGonagall's eyes took in everything, cataloging details, the strange circular sigils carved into beams. The faintly glowing lines on the floor like drawn constellations, the sense that the building was layered. Wong closed the door behind them and began walking without asking them to follow. Because the sanctum itself seemed to guide their steps. Corridors opened where none should exist. Shadows shifted like they were alive. They stopped in a round room with a high ceiling and a window shaped like a great circle, an eye looking out into the night. In the center, a woman waited. She did not stand like a ruler waiting for subjects. She stood like a mountain waiting for weather. The Ancient One. Her face was calm, her head shaved, her robes simple. But there was a gravity around her that made McGonagall's breath catch. Even Dumbledore, for all his power, seemed to become slightly more careful in his movements. Her gaze went immediately to the child. And the air tightened. Not hostile, focused. Like the world itself held its breath. You brought him here, she said, voice soft. Dumbledore's eyes held hers. I did. The Ancient One walked forward without hurry. She stopped beside Hagrid, and Hagrid, who had stared down dragons, looked suddenly unsure what to do with his hands. She's the little one, he managed. The Ancient One glanced at him, and her expression warmed, just a fraction. You carried him gently. Hagrid said, fiercely. As gentle as I know how. Her attention returned to Harry. She reached out, 2 fingers hovering just above the lightning-shaped wound. And then, something in the room moved. Not a person, not a shadow, a presence. Cold, sly, hungry. It peered out from behind the scar like a creature hiding behind a curtain. McGonagall's wand snapped up on instinct. Dumbledore's hand went to his own wand, not drawing yet. But ready. Hagrid growled, a low protective rumble. Wong's hand lifted, no wand, just a subtle motion, and golden sigils sparked to life around his wrist. The Ancient One did none of that. She simply looked. And the presence recoiled. Harry's scar darkened for a heartbeat. The baby's lips parted as if to cry, but he didn't. He only shivered. A soul fragment, McGonagall whispered, horrified. Dumbledore's jaw tightened. Yes. The Ancient One's eyes narrowed, not in fear, but in understanding. Not merely a curse. Not merely a wound. She withdrew her hand and turned to Dumbledore. This child is a vessel. McGonagall's voice shook with anger. He is a child. The Ancient One's gaze softened. Those truths can exist at the same time. Dumbledore's voice was quietly broken. I did not know. Not until tonight. Wong exhaled slowly. If that thing grows. It will, the Ancient One said, and it was the most terrifying sentence in the room because of how calmly she said it. Hagrid tightened his hold. Then get it out of him. McGonagall nodded sharply. Yes. Remove it. Dumbledore looked at the Ancient One, something like hope and dread twisting together. Can you? The Ancient One did not answer immediately. Instead, she stepped closer again. Her hands lifted, and golden light traced patterns in the air, circles within circles, lines folding into impossible angles. Mystic geometry. The air thrummed, as if the room had become a bell and her hands were the strike that made it sing. A circle of light formed above Harry's forehead. It didn't touch him. It hovered, spinning slowly, like an eye opening. Harry's tiny face scrunched as if he felt pressure. His eyes fluttered open. They were bright green. And for a moment, just a moment, there was something else behind them. Red. A flicker of a snake's stare. McGonagall hissed a breath. Albus. Dumbledore didn't move. He couldn't. His eyes were fixed on the child. The Ancient One's light shifted. The room deepened. And then she did something that made even Dumbledore's stomach drop. She pulled Harry's spirit half a step out of his body. Not the violent ripping of Dementors. Not the crude tug of dark magic. A precise, controlled separation, like easing a blade from a sheath. Harry's astral form shimmered above his small body, translucent and gold-edged, eyes wide not with fear but with stunned curiosity. And there it was, clinging to the edge of his astral chest like rot, a dark shard of something that should not be alive. It looked like smoke shaped into a hook. It writhed when the Ancient One's gaze touched it. And it recognized her. The shard's presence surged, furious, venomous. The temperature dropped. Hagrid's breath came out in a puff of fog. McGonagall's fingers tightened white around her wand. Dumbledore stepped forward. Do not hurt him. I won't, the Ancient One said. The shard lunged, and stopped, because the Ancient Nay raised two fingers and drew a single line in the air. A line so simple it seemed harmless. But the moment it existed, reality obeyed it. A golden boundary snapped into place around Harry's astral form. And the shard slammed into it like a fly against glass. It hissed. Not with sound. With intent. A silent scream of hatred. Wong's eyes widened. That is foreign, the Ancient One finished. Not of your wizarding world. Not of mine. Dumbledore's voice was hoarse. It is Voldemort. McGonagall flinched at the name. A part of him. Yes, the Ancient One said, and then, to everyone's shock, she looked, almost thoughtful. As if he attempted to cheat death by anchoring himself in fragments. Dumbledore stared at her. You understand this. I have seen many attempts to dodge the end, the Ancient One said. Time, souls, darkness, pride, they all taste similar. Hagrid's voice cracked. So can you take it out? The Ancient One's fingers hovered near the shard. The room held its breath again. She touched it. And Harry's astral form convulsed, the baby's physical body arching as if struck by lightning. Dumbledore lunged, wand half drawn. The Ancient One pulled her hand back instantly. And the convulsion stopped. Harry whimpered, a tiny sound that felt like an accusation. The Ancient One's expression changed. For the first time, a shadow crossed her calm. Not yet, she said quietly. McGonagall's eyes blazed. What do you mean not yet? I mean, the Ancient One replied, voice still soft, that the fragment is tangled with him. His soul is still forming. Remove it carelessly and you tear him apart with it. Dumbledore's hope collapsed into dread. So he must live with it. He must live, the Ancient One corrected. And he must be trained. Wong frowned. Trained, to contain it. Trained to be stronger than it, the Ancient One said. Harry's astral form drifted back into his body like a leaf settling on water. His eyes fluttered shut. His breathing steadied. The shard stayed. Contained for now. But not gone. The Ancient One looked at Dumbledore. You intended to hide him. Yes, Dumbledore admitted. Hiding is a strategy, she said. It is not a life. McGonagall's voice trembled. But he's a baby. And yet, the Ancient One replied, the universe has already placed a blade in his hand. Her gaze dropped to Harry's scar again. Then she did something else, something that made the air warm slightly. She placed her palm over the baby's forehead. Not touching the shard, not forcing it. Just covering him. Golden light seeped gently into the wound, weaving around the dark fragment like careful stitching around a thorn lodged in flesh. The fragment hissed again, but it could not lash out. The golden light didn't destroy it. It caged it. Not a prison of iron. A prison of discipline. A promise written in geometry. Harry sighed in his sleep. And the lightning scar cooled, the angry red fading to a calmer line. The Ancient One stepped back. "This will hold for a time," she said. "But he will grow. And it will grow with him." Dumbledore's shoulders sagged. "Then what do we do?" The Ancient One studied him, this legendary wizard who had just watched his world almost end, and in her gaze there was no judgment, only clarity. "You give him a childhood," she said. McGonagall made a sound of disbelief. "Here." "Yes," the Ancient One said simply. "Here." Hagrid's eyes widened. At this place." "At Kamar-Taj," the Ancient One corrected, and the name itself felt like a doorway. "Where discipline is not cruelty and strength is not ego. Where he will learn to look at his fear without drowning in it." Dumbledore hesitated. And in that hesitation lived 1,000 worries: wizarding politics, prophecy, war, secrecy. The Ministry, the eyes of enemies. The Ancient One waited. Finally, Dumbledore spoke the truth that hurt the most. "I fear what he may become." The Ancient One's voice was very quiet. "So do I." McGonagall's eyes snapped to her. "Then why?" "Because fear is not reason to abandon him to ignorance," the Ancient One said. "If you leave him untrained, the darkness in him will have a teacher before you do." The room went still. Dumbledore swallowed. He looked down at the sleeping child. At the scar. At the faint golden stitching around it that now pulsed in time with Harry's heartbeat. Then he nodded, once. "Very well," he said. "I entrust him to you." Hagrid's grip tightened, protective instinct flaring. "Professor." Dumbledore stepped closer Hagrid and placed a hand on the giant man's arm again, steadying him. "Hagrid, you saved him tonight." Hagrid's eyes glistened. "I let him be saved again," Dumbledore whispered. Hagrid looked at the Ancient One, then at Wong. Then down at Harry. Slowly, like handing over the last piece of his own heart, Hagrid offered the bundle. The Ancient One took Harry with a gentleness that seemed impossible for someone who could bend reality with her hands. Harry stirred, tiny fingers curling, and for a moment his hand caught the edge of her robe. It was such a small thing. But the Ancient One's eyes softened further. She looked down at him and said, not as a sorcerer to a prophecy, but as a guardian to a child. "You are safe." The words didn't just sound comforting. They settled into the air like a ward. Dumbledore exhaled, the breath he hadn't known he was holding since Godric's Hollow. McGonagall stood very still, torn between relief and fear. Wong watched the scar with careful wariness. And somewhere, in the dark splinter trapped behind that lightning mark, something hateful and patient listened. The Ancient One lifted her gaze back to Dumbledore. "This choice will change your world," she said. Dumbledore's smile was sad. "It already has." "No," she corrected. "This will change his world. Which means it will change everything." Outside, the city continued sleeping. Inside, a door had opened. And a boy who was meant to grow up in a cupboard under the stairs had just taken his first breath in a house that was larger than any map. The Ancient One turned, carrying Harry deeper into the sanctum. Toward corridors that curved like riddles and stairs that did not always lead where they appeared. Dumbledore watched until they vanished into shadow. Then he whispered, to no one and everyone, "Forgive me, Lily." The sanctum door closed without a sound. And the universe, having cracked once tonight, began to rearrange itself around a new center. Harry's first memory was not a cupboard. It was silence. Not the empty silence of abandonment, but the kind that had shape. The kind that wrapped around him like a blanket and told his bones, without words, "You are not alone here." Kamar-Taj smelled like incense and old stone and snow carried in on monks' hems. It sounded like prayer wheels turning, like distant bells, like footsteps that never hurried. And at night, when London should have been outside his window, there was only the slow drift of clouds over mountains that seemed too ancient to belong to Earth. He grew up beneath hanging lanterns. And shifting shadows that were not quite shadows. He learned early that the world was bigger than the rules most people followed. He also learned that rules existed for a reason. The Ancient One did not coddle him. She did not frighten him either. She simply trained him, the way you would train a flame not to burn the house down. At 3, she taught him to breathe. At 4, she taught him to sit still with his fear. At 5, she taught him to look directly at the scar in the mirror and not flinch when it pulsed like a second heartbeat. Harry hated that part most. Because the scar wasn't just a mark. Sometimes, when he woke sweating from dreams of green light, he could feel something behind it. Like someone standing in the dark of his own skull, listening. The Ancient One never denied it. That feeling, she told him once, kneeling beside his small mat as he shivered in the pre-dawn cold, is not your master. Harry's voice was tiny, raw. It's in me. It is near you, she corrected gently. There's a difference. You must learn the difference. He swallowed. Will it hurt me? It will try, she said honestly. Harry stared at her, waiting for the comforting lie that grown-ups always gave children. It never came. Instead she placed 2 fingers on his forehead, light as falling snow, and the room seemed to sharpen, as if his mind had been cleaned of smudges. Do you know what pain is? She asked. Harry sniffed. When something bad happens. She nodded. And do you know what suffering is? He hesitated. Suffering, she said softly, is when you hold pain close and call it your name. Harry didn't understand all of it then. But he understood enough. He understood she was offering him something the Dursleys would never have given him. A way to be hurt without being broken. Wong became his constant in the way mountains are constant, always there, always solid, always watching even when he wasn't speaking. Wong carried him through the corridor. When Harry's legs were too small for the endless steps. Wong brought him bread warm from the kitchen and tea that tasted like bitter leaves and patience. And when Harry began to ask questions that had sharp edges, Wong answered them without flinching. Why do we draw circles? Harry asked, watching chalk sweep across stone. Wong's hand moved steadily, creating a perfect ring. Because circles have no weak corners. Why do we meditate? So your mind doesn't become a weak corner. Harry frowned, because children always believe their thoughts are invincible. Then the scar would throb. And Harry would sit up straighter. He learned Sanskrit by sound first, like songs that his tongue stumbled over until they became familiar. He learned geometry the way other kids learn to play, tracing angles, repeating patterns. Watching how lines could become doors. He learned the names of things that didn't exist in his old life, planes, dimensions, astral bodies, wards, relics. He learned that strength wasn't a fist. Strength was control. And every day the Ancient One looked at him like she was measuring the space between what he was and what he could become. Not with hunger. With responsibility. Harry's first spell wasn't a spell. It was an accident. He was 6, sitting cross-legged in the library, tongue sticking out as he copied a mandala from an ancient text. Wong had left him with one instruction. Don't move. Don't rush. Precision matters. Harry tried. He really did. But a fly landed on the page. It crawled across his careful lines like it owned them. Harry's eye twitched. Go away, he muttered. The fly didn't. His scar prickled, just a tiny sting, and something inside him surged like a reflex. The ink on the page jumped. Not splattered, not spilled, jumped cleanly off the parchment, rose into the air in a perfect spiral, and formed a small, shimmering cage around the fly. The fly buzzed helplessly inside, trapped in a lattice of ink lines as neat as a diagram. Harry froze. His breath stopped. He stared at his own hands like they had betrayed him. The library went very, very quiet. Wong appeared in the doorway like he'd been summoned by the disturbance itself. He looked from the floating ink cage to Harry's wide eyes. Then, slowly, he walked in. Harry whispered, I didn't mean. Wong lifted a finger. The ink cage dissolved back onto the page in a perfect spill that never touched the wrong line. The fly shot away and vanished among the shelves. Wong crouched beside Harry. His voice was calm. Again. Harry blinked. What? Do it again, Wong said. Harry swallowed. I can't. It just happened. Wong nodded once, like that was the correct answer. Good. That means you didn't force it. Harry's voice shook. Was it the scar? Wong's gaze sharpened. What did you feel? Harry searched himself, the way he'd been taught. He closed his eyes, replayed the moment. I felt annoyed, he admitted. And then, Harry hesitated. And then it was like, I had a second set of hands inside me. Wong's expression didn't change, but his eyes did, something careful, something measuring. Tell the Ancient One, he said simply. Harry's stomach sank. Am I in trouble? Wong placed a hand on Harry's shoulder, heavy and real. No, you're awake. There's a difference. The Ancient One listened without interrupting. She listened the way she listened to everything, like she was hearing not just words, but the space between them. When Harry finished, she didn't scold him. She didn't praise him either. She simply stood, walked to the center of the training hall, and gestured. "Show me how you sit," she said. Harry climbed onto his mat and crossed his legs. "Good," she murmured. "Now breathe." He did. In, she guided. Out. The world slowed. The lanterns stopped flickering. Harry's scar cooled, just a little, as if even the thing behind it was listening. The Ancient One stepped behind him. Her voice was quiet. "There are 2 rivers in you." Harry swallowed. 2. "One is your birthright," she said. "The magic of your world. Wild, emotional, ancient. And the other is what we teach," she replied. "Shape, focus, discipline. A way to aim the river so it doesn't flood." Harry stared at his hands. "Is the scar a river too?" The Ancient One paused. When she answered, it was honest in a way that made Harry's throat tighten. "No," she said. "The scar is a thorn in the riverbed. It tries to change the flow." Harry's small fingers curled into fists. "Then I'll pull it out." The Ancient One's voice softened. "Not by grabbing it with fear." Harry's eyes stung. "Then how?" She crouched beside him, eye level. "By becoming the kind of person it cannot use." It wasn't a dramatic speech. It was a simple statement. But it landed like a vow. Years passed like turning pages. At 7, Harry learned to draw a shield sigil so cleanly that Wong's eyebrow lifted. At 8, he learned his first footwork, how to move without wasting motion, how to pivot, how to strike without anger. At 9, he tried to make a portal with a training ring and failed. So many times he bit his tongue until it bled. Wong offered him water. Harry took it with shaking hands and whispered, furious at himself, "Why won't it work?" Wong looked at him over the rim of his cup. "Because you keep imagining where you want to go." Harry blinked. "That's the point." "No," Wong said. "You're imagining escape." Harry's throat tightened. Because it was true. Every time he pictured a door, it wasn't to a destination, it was to away. Away from green light. Away from screams he couldn't fully remember. Away from the feeling behind his scar. Wong set the cup down. "Try again. But this time, don't run." Harry swallowed hard. He closed his eyes. And he imagined something else. Not a place. A feeling. Warm lantern light. Stone beneath his feet. The scent of incense. The quiet weight of belonging. He raised the ring, hands trembling, and traced a circle in the air. Sparks flared. Not the roaring portal he dreamed of. Just a thin, golden seam, like sunlight cracking through a door. Harry's breath hitched. For a second, he saw snow beyond it. Then the seam snapped shut. He stared at the empty air, heart pounding. Wong nodded once. Again. And Harry did. Again and again and again. Until his arms ached and his mind shook and his scar throbbed like it hated the discipline. But the more Harry breathed, the more he focused, the more the throw. Being quieted, like the thorn was being forced to sit still. That night, Harry lay in bed staring at the ceiling. He didn't dream of green light. He dreamed of doors. On his 10th birthday, the Ancient One took him somewhere he'd never been allowed before. A sealed room beneath Kamar-Taj, locked by sigils that hummed faintly when she passed. Inside, the air tasted like old secrets. Shelves lined the walls, filled with relics that seemed to bend light around them. Harry's scar prickled the moment he stepped in. He slowed automatically. The Ancient One watched him with a small, approving tilt of her head. "You feel it." Harry's voice was cautious. "It doesn't like this place." "Good," she said. "That means you're learning to tell your instincts from its hunger." Harry swallowed. "Why are we here?" The Ancient One walked to a shelf and pulled down an object wrapped in cloth. When she unwrapped it, Harry saw a book, old, thick, its cover worn by centuries. It was not written in Sanskrit. The letters were strange and familiar at the same time, curling like wand smoke. Harry stared. Something inside him, something different from the scar, thrummed in recognition. "This is from your world," the Ancient One said quietly. Harry reached toward it without thinking. The moment his fingers brushed the cover, the scar flared hot. A whisper curled in his skull like smoke. "Mine." Harry jerked his hand back. Breathing hard. The Ancient One didn't move. Her eyes remained calm, but sharper now. "You see." Harry swallowed, voice shaking. "It wants it. It wants connection," she corrected. "Anchors. Doors." Harry stared at the book like it was a live snake. "What is it?" The Ancient One turned the book so he could see the title. Harry sounded it out slowly, the way he'd learned new words all his life. Hogwarts. The syllables clicked into place like a key in a lock. Hogwarts, he whispered. A name that wasn't Kamar-Taj. A name that wasn't the sanctum. A name that felt like a distant bell calling from a world he didn't remember but somehow belonged to. The Ancient One watched him, expression unreadable. Soon, she said softly, you will have to walk in two worlds. Harry's scar throbbed like a warning. But beneath it, deeper, something else stirred. Curiosity. Purpose. A quiet, steady readiness. Harry looked up at her, green eyes bright in the lantern light. Will Hogwarts teach me? He asked. The Ancient One's lips curved just slightly. It will try, she said. Then she added, like a truth carved in stone. And you will change it. Snow fell in Kamar-Taj the way secrets fell, quietly, steadily, and with no concern for who was watching. Harry stood barefoot on the cold stone of the training hall, breath fogging in front of him. He was 10 now, older in the eyes than most boys his age, because fear had been introduced to him early and discipline had been introduced right after. Wong paced behind him like a metronome. Again, Wong said. Harry's fingers tightened around the training sling ring. It wasn't ornate like the relics in the lower vaults. This one was plain brass, worn smooth by countless hands. Countless failures. Harry lifted his arm, drew a circle in the air with the ring the way he'd been taught, and focused on a single image. The outer courtyard. A place he knew so well he could map every crack in the stone. The air sparked. A seam of golden light opened, thin, trembling. Harry's heart jumped. Then the seam collapsed with a soft pop, like a candle snuffed out. The ring went cold in his palm. Harry's shoulders slumped. Wong exhaled slowly through his nose. Not disappointed. Not impressed. Simply, inevitable. You keep pushing, Wong observed. Harry's jaw tightened. Because it should work. Wong's footsteps stopped behind him. Tell me what you're thinking. Harry swallowed. His scar prickled faintly, like it always did when he felt cornered by a question. He breathed tea. Heroic the way the Ancient One had taught him. I'm thinking, that if I can just get it right, Harry admitted, then I won't have to wait for things to happen. Wong was silent for a moment. Then he said, quietly. So it is about control. Harry flinched. Wong moved into his line of sight, looking down at him with that steady mountain gaze. Control is not the enemy, Wong continued. Chasing it with fear will make you sloppy. Harry's mouth went dry. I'm not afraid. Wong's eyebrow lifted. Harry's cheeks warmed. He hated that Wong could read him even without legilimency, without wands, without spells. Just with presence. Wong tapped the sling ring with one finger. A portal is not a door you kick open. It is a door that recognizes you. Harry's fingers tightened around the ring. Then why doesn't it recognize me? Wong's answer landed like a stone dropped into still water. Because part of you still thinks you don't belong anywhere. Harry stared. That was the problem, wasn't it? Kamar-Taj was home. He knew it. He felt it. And yet, somewhere under his ribs, a small, stubborn part of him still expected the floor to vanish. Still expected betrayal. Still expected to be left behind. He didn't remember a cupboard. He didn't remember privet drive. But his body remembered abandonment the way scars remembered knives. Harry swallowed hard, then lifted the ring again. Wong's voice softened. Close your eyes. Harry did. Breathe, Wong said. Harry inhaled, exhaled. His scar cooled slightly. Now, Wong continued, don't picture the courtyard. Picture what it feels like to stand there. Harry tried. Stone beneath his feet, wind against his cheek, the smell of incense and snow. The quiet sense of being watched over. His chest loosened. Now, Wong said, draw. Harry lifted the ring and traced a circle in the air. Sparks flared brighter this time, like sunlight striking flint. A portal opened. Not a seam. A doorway. Golden edges spinning, stable, humming with power. Harry's eyes snapped open. Beyond the circle was the courtyard, exactly as he imagined it, snow drifting gently over the stone steps. Harry's breath caught. For a heartbeat, he didn't move. Then he stepped forward. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, his scar exploded with heat. Pain lanced behind his eyes. The portal flickered violently. Harry stumbled back, clutching his forehead as the ring went icy cold and the doorway snapped shut like it had never existed. Harry dropped to one knee, breathing hard, tears burning at the edges of his eyes not from emotion but from pressure. He pressed his palm against his scar, jaw clenched. Wong crouched beside him, not touching yet, letting Harry find his own breath. Tell me, Wong said calmly, what happened? Harry forced his thoughts into order. He replayed it, frame by frame. It worked, he said through his teeth. Then my scar. Wong nodded. And Harry swallowed. His throat felt tight. It felt like something woke up. Wong's eyes narrowed slightly. Harry's breathing slowed. He realized something that made his stomach drop. It didn't like me leaving, Harry whispered. Wong's voice stayed even, but the air around him sharpened. Or it didn't like the doorway you made. Harry stared at the floor. Because the courtyard wasn't just a courtyard. It was a boundary point. A place where Kamar-Taj met the world outside. A place where doors mattered. The thing behind his scar wasn't just pain. It was instinct. Predatory, hungry, territorial. Wong stood, straightening his robes. Come. Harry looked up. Where? Wong's gaze went toward the long corridor leading deeper into Kamar-Taj, toward the sealed doors Harry wasn't allowed to touch alone. To the Ancient One, Wong said. Harry's stomach tightened. The Ancient One was not in her usual chamber. She was on the balcony, facing the mountains, hands folded behind her back as if she'd been waiting. Harry approached slowly, the sling ring heavy in his palm like a question he didn't want answered. Wong bowed his head. He opened it, he reported. But the scar reacted. The Ancient One nodded without turning. Of course it did. Harry's voice was small, but steady. Why? The Ancient One finally looked at him. Her eyes held the kind of depth that made Harry feel seen all the way through. You opened a door, she said simply. Harry swallowed. That's the point. Yes, she agreed. And the fragment in you understands doors better than you do. Harry's scar prickled. He breathed. It wants to leave, Harry said quietly. The Ancient One's expression shifted, almost sad. It wants to return. Harry's blood felt like it cooled. Return to Voldemort. Wong stiffened at the name. The Ancient One did not. That piece was torn away, she explained. A splinter. It is incomplete. Incomplete things hunger to be whole. Harry clenched the ring. So I'm just a container. The Ancient One stepped closer. She did not offer comfort. She offered truth. You are a person, she said, voice gentle but firm. A container is empty. You are not. Harry's eyes stung. He blinked hard. What if it uses my doors? He asked. The Ancient One studied him. Then she lifted her hand and tapped his forehead lightly, 2 fingers, cold as snow. The world shifted. Harry felt himself tilt, not physically, but inward. Suddenly he wasn't on the balcony. He was standing in a dark room. No, not a room. A space inside himself. A place made of memory and fear and half-formed dreams. In the center was the scar. Not on his skin, but as an idea. A crack in a wall. Something pressed against the other side of it. Harry's breath hitched. Because he could feel it. The presence. Patient. Coiled. Listening. The Ancient One's voice echoed around him, calm and distant. This is your mind, she said. This is where your battle begins. Harry swallowed, forcing himself not to recoil. He stepped closer to the crack. The thing behind it stirred. A whisper curled through the crack like smoke. Open. Harry's hands trembled. He didn't respond. Instead, he did what he'd been trained to do since he was 3. He breathed. In. Out. He watched the fear rise and fall like a wave. The whisper pressed again, sharper this time. Open. Harry felt his scar flare. He gritted his teeth. Then, carefully, he raised his hand, not the sling ring, not a wand, just his hand. And he traced a small circle in the air. Not a portal, a sigil, a simple one, a boundary line. The crack's edges glowed faintly gold. The whisper recoiled. Harry's breath shook, but he held the sigil steady. The Ancient One's voice softened. Good. The darkness around him faded. The balcony returned. Harry blinked, sweat cold on his neck. Wong's eyes were sharp, impressed despite himself. Harry looked at the Ancient One, voice hoarse. I held it back. Yes, she said, because you didn't fight it with anger. You didn't bargain with fear. Harry swallowed. So what now? The Ancient One turned toward the mountains again. Her voice was quiet, and somehow heavier than anything she'd said so far. Now you learn the real rule of doors, she said. Harry waited. She looked at him over her shoulder. Every time you open one, she said, something can look back. Harry's stomach tightened. Wong's hands folded into his sleeves. He needs safeguards. The Ancient One nodded. He needs anchors. Harry's grip tightened on the ring. Anchors. The Ancient One stepped toward the training hall entrance. Places you can return to without escape. People you can trust without hesitation. A mind that does not fracture when pressure rises. Harry followed, pulse steadying with purpose. But, he said carefully, what about Hogwarts? Wong stiffened slightly at the name. The Ancient One's expression became unreadable. Hogwarts, she repeated, as if tasting it. A castle of moving staircases and ancient wards. A place built like a puzzle box. Harry's scar prickled again, faint and eager. Harry noticed, and hated that he noticed. The Ancient One's eyes narrowed just slightly. That place, she said, is full of doors. Harry swallowed. And if I go, he asked, it will try to use them. Yes, the Ancient One said. Harry felt fear rise. He let it pass. Then he lifted his chin. Then I'll learn faster, he said. Wong's eyes flicked to him, surprised. The Ancient One stared at Harry for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled. Not warmly. Proudly. Good, she said. That is the first answer I needed to hear. She reached into her robes and pulled out something small. A thin cord with a simple metal charm, engraved with a circle within a circle. She placed it in Harry's palm. The charm was cool, steady, quiet. This is not a weapon, she said. It is a reminder. Harry looked up. Of what? That you do not belong to your fear, she replied. You belong to your choice. Harry closed his fingers around it. The scar cooled, just a fraction, as if the thorn disliked being reminded who held the river. Outside, snow continued to fall. Inside, Harry's world widened again, one doorway at a time. The first Hogwarts letter did not arrive by owl. It arrived like an echo. One quiet afternoon, when Kamar-Taj was wrapped in mist and the courtyard stones were wet from melted snow, Harry felt it before anyone said a word. A tug, not on his sleeve or his hand, on something deeper. Like a thin thread in his chest had been pulled from far away. He froze mid-step. Wong noticed instantly. What is it? Harry's fingers drifted to the simple charm the Ancient One had given him, the circle within a circle. The metal felt steady under his thumb. It's calling, Harry whispered. The scar warmed. Not a flare, not pain, more like a hot coal buried under skin, waking in recognition. Wong's expression tightened. Where? Harry swallowed. A castle. Wong didn't need more. He turned sharply and walked with Harry through the corridor that seemed to lengthen for important moments, past a prayer wheel that spun without being touched. Past a doorway that was never open unless you were expected. They reached the Ancient One's chamber. She was already there. Of course she was. She sat at a low table, tea steaming beside her. As if she had been waiting for the universe to finally catch up to her schedule. Sit, she said calmly. Harry obeyed, folding his legs beneath him. Wong stood behind him like a guard post. The Ancient One's eyes rested on Harry's scar for one quiet second. Then she lifted her hand and made a small motion. A ripple passed through the air. And with a soft rustle like wings brushing parchment, an envelope slid into existence on the table. It was thick, cream-colored, and addressed in emerald ink. Mr. Harry James Potter. Kamar-Taj. Protected route. Somewhere between here and home. Harry stared. Wong's eyebrows rose despite himself. They found you. They didn't, the Ancient One corrected gently. They reached you. Harry's mouth went dry. Is that safe? The Ancient Nate poured tea as if he'd asked whether rain was wet. Safe is not a place, Harry. It is preparation. Harry's fingers hovered over the envelope. The scar pulsed once, eager. He withdrew his hand. The Ancient One watched that hesitation with quiet approval. Open it, she said. Harry broke the seal. The parchment inside smelled faintly of old magic and candle smoke. He read the first line aloud without meaning to. Because some words demanded to be spoken. We are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. The letters blurred for a moment, not because of tears, but because something inside him shifted. A door, a life he hadn't lived, a world that was his by blood and prophecy and tragedy. Harry swallowed hard. So it's real. Wong's voice was careful. Wizarding Britain does not invent castles for fun. Harry glanced up. You knew. Wong's gaze flicked to the Ancient One. We suspected. Your magic carries a signature. Harry looked back down at the parchment, reading about robes, books, wand. His eyes caught on that word like it was a splinter. A wand, Harry said slowly. They want me to use a wand. The Ancient One sipped her tea. That is their tradition. Harry frowned, the way he always did when something felt unnecessarily limiting. But why would you need a stick to do magic? Wong's lips twitched. Ask a wizard why they need Latin to feel powerful. Harry's expression sharpened. Do I have to go? The Ancient One set her cup down. She didn't answer immediately. She watched him. The scar warmed again, almost hopeful. Harry hated that. He hated the idea of the fragment inside him reacting to Hogwarts like it had a memory Harry didn't. Finally, the Ancient One said, yes. Harry's stomach dropped. Then she added, not because they demand it. Because you will learn what your enemy knows. Wong's voice tightened. Their politics are corrosive. Their fears are contagious. The Ancient One nodded once. Yes. Harry whispered, and, the prophecy. The Ancient One's eyes were steady. A prophecy is a map drawn by someone who hasn't walked the terrain. Harry's scar prickled, annoyed, almost. The Ancient One noticed. You will go, she continued, but you will not go unguarded. Harry lifted his head. You're coming. A very small smile touched her mouth. No. The disappointment hit Harry fast and sharp, more painful than he expected. Then her gaze softened, and she added, but you will not be alone. 2 days later, the air at Kamar-Taj shifted. Not the ripple of a portal. Not the glow of a sigil. Something older. Something that made even Wong straighten. A presence approached the boundary of their world. Wong moved to the courtyard with Harry at his side. The monks paused their sweeping. The bells went quiet, as if the air itself was listening. A man appeared at the edge of the courtyard, tall, robed, bearded, eyes like worn steel behind half-moon glasses. Albus Dumbledore stepped into Kamar-Taj like someone entering a temple he respected. He did not look surprised by the impossible architecture. He did not gawp at the floating lanterns. He simply breathed in, as if tasting the place. Then his gaze fell on Harry. For a moment, something in Dumbledore's expression cracked, relief, grief, and wonder all pressing at once. Harry looked back, studying him the way he'd been taught to study everything. This was the man who had decided where his life would begin. This was the man who had chosen not to leave him in a cupboard. You've grown, Dumbledore said softly. Harry's voice came out calm, because calm was the armor Kamar-Taj had given him. You left me. Dumbledore flinched, tiny, but real. Yes, he said. And I am sorry. Harry didn't know what to do with that. Adults in Kamar-Taj did not apologize like it was a spell. They apologized like it was a truth. The Ancient One appeared beside them without hurry. Her voice was quiet. You came quickly. Quote. Dumbledore inclined his head. I felt the pull when the letter finally found its way. Wong folded his hands into his sleeves. Your system is persistent. Dumbledore's gaze flicked to him. And yours is astonishing. His eyes returned to Harry's forehead. Harry felt the look like a hand hovering over his scar. Not touching. Measuring. You can sense it, Harry said. Dumbledore's voice was gentle and heavy. Yes. Wong's eyes narrowed. Can you control your expression when you sense it? Dumbledore's mouth tightened, almost a smile, almost regret. I can try. Harry's scar warmed, like it didn't like being discussed. The Ancient One stepped forward. He goes to Hogwarts, but not as a lamb to slaughter. Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. I never intended. You intended many things, the Ancient One interrupted softly, and still, your world nearly ended. Dumbledore went still. Harry watched that. The way power could be challenged without shouting. The Ancient One continued, he will attend. He will learn. And he will return here during breaks. Dumbledore nodded slowly. That is acceptable. Wong's voice was like a blade wrapped in cloth. And if the Ministry objects? Dumbledore's eyes glittered behind his spectacles. Then the Ministry will learn to accept. Harry felt something shift in his chest. A strange warmth. Not love. Not yet. But, protection. Dumbledore looked down at Harry. You will be watched at Hogwarts. Harry's brow furrowed. By you. Dumbledore hesitated. Then he told the truth again, the kind Harry had come to expect. By people who care, Dumbledore said. And by people who want you dead. Harry nodded, absorbing it like a lesson. I can handle that, he said quietly. Wong exhaled through his nose. Confidence is not immunity. Harry looked up at him. I know. The Ancient One's gaze flicked between them. He will need tools. Dumbledore's expression shifted. A wand. Harry's face tightened instantly. Wong's lips twitched again. Of course. Harry said, bluntly, I don't want a wand. Dumbledore blinked. Most young witches and wizards consider it the greatest day of their lives. Harry's eyes didn't move. Most young witches and wizards weren't trained to fight nightmares in their own skull. The courtyard went quiet. Dumbledore's gaze softened. Fair. The Ancient One reached into her robes and withdrew an object Harry hadn't seen before. A thin cord with a small, flat disc of metal, etched with layered circles and lines that seemed to shift when you looked away. She held it out to Harry. Harry took it carefully. It was heavier than it should be. Steady. Quiet. This will not cast spells for you, she said. It will remind you how to anchor. Harry's fingers closed around it. What does it do? It stabilizes your focus when you are overwhelmed, Wong explained. It will not stop the scar from reacting. But it will stop you from reacting to the scar. Harry swallowed. So it keeps me from being pulled. The Ancient One nodded. Yes. Dumbledore studied the disc, interest and caution mixing. Remarkable. The Ancient One's gaze was sharp. And you will also do your part, Albus. Dumbledore's eyes met hers. Name it. Do not treat him like a symbol, she said softly. Treat him like a boy. Something twisted in Dumbledore's expression, pain, perhaps. I will try, he said. The Ancient One's voice gentled. Try harder than you did last time. Dumbledore bowed his head. Harry watched that too. They left Kamar-Taj the next morning. Not through a portal. Dumbledore insisted on doing some things the proper wizard way. So Harry experienced apparition for the first time. It was awful. It felt like being squeezed through a keyhole by the universe itself. He made it out on the other side pale and furious. This is your idea of travel? He rasped. Dumbledore looked mildly apologetic. Most wizards find it efficient. Harry glared. Most wizards are insane. Wong would have smirked. The Ancient One would have said nothing. Dumbledore just blinked, and then, shockingly, he chuckled. Perhaps, he admitted. Diagon Alley hit Harry like a crowded dream. Noise, color, magic layered on magic, people brushing past like waves. And everywhere, wands. Wands in sleeves. Wands in holsters. Wands tucked behind ears like quills. Harry felt like he'd walked into a world where everyone had agreed to use the same crutch and called it culture. Dumbledore guided him through shops with the ease of a man who could become invisible when he wanted. People stared, whispered, pointed, because even without the prophet screaming it, everyone knew that face. The boy who lived. Harry hated the way it tasted. He PT one hand on the anchor disc beneath his robes, thumb pressing circles into calm. At Madame Malkin's, the tape measure tried to strangle him. Harry calmly pinned it to the wall with a small, flicked sigil. The shop went silent. Madame Malkin stared. Dumbledore coughed politely. He's had unusual schooling. Harry shrugged. The tape attacked me. That is fair, Madame Malkin said faintly. They moved on. Flourish and blots felt like home and not home at the same time. Books. But these books were different. They hummed with spells like sleeping animals. Harry's scar prickled in one aisle, hot and eager. And Harry stepped away immediately. Dumbledore noticed. Something wrong. Harry's voice was flat. Something here likes the scar. Dumbledore's expression sharpened. We'll be quick. They gathered supplies. Cauldrons. Parchment. Quills. Robes. And then there was only one stop left. Ollivander's. The shop looked like it had been built from dust and patience. The bell above the door rang like a whisper. Inside, the air smelled of wood and old power. Harry stepped in and immediately felt it, the sensation of being examined. Not by eyes. By wands. Thousands of them, stacked in narrow boxes like coffins for sleeping lightning. A voice drifted from the back, thin as silk. Ah, yes. Footsteps. A pale old man emerged, eyes bright and unsettling, like marbles that had seen too much. Harry Potter, Ollivander breathed, as if savoring the name. I wondered when I'd meet you. Harry held his gaze, calm and unreadable. Ollivander's eyes flicked to the scar and widened with delight. Yes, I remember every wand I've ever sold. And I remember yours, Mr. Potter. Harry's scar warmed. Not pain. Recognition. The anchor disc beneath his robes cooled it, just slightly. Ollivander's voice was dreamy. Holly and phoenix feather. 11 inches. Nice and supple. Dumbledore's face tightened. Harry didn't blink. That wand is mine. Ollivander's smile was sharp. It chose you. Harry's voice stayed steady. I didn't choose it. Ollivander waved a hand. Young wizards rarely understand choice. Harry's eyes narrowed. Dumbledore said gently, let us proceed. Ollivander began pulling boxes, placing wands in Harry's hand one by one. Harry tried them. And nothing happened. Not sparks. Not warmth. Not connection. Just emptiness. Ollivander's smile faded. He began to look concerned. That's odd, he murmured. Very odd. Harry's scar pulsed again, hotter. Harry breathed. Pressed the anchor disc. The warmth steadied. Ollivander tried another wand. Still nothing. Another. Nothing. Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. Perhaps. Ollivander's eyes gleamed suddenly. No. No, I think I understand. He disappeared into the back, returning with a long, narrow box he held like it was dangerous. He opened it reverently. Holly, Ollivander whispered. Phoenix feather. Dumbledore's jaw tightened. Harry stared at the wand and sighed like it was a snake offering friendship. Ollivander placed it in Harry's palm. The moment Harry's fingers closed, the shop lights flickered. Air pressure shifted. Harry's scarf flared like someone had shoved a branding iron into his skull. A whisper slithered behind his eyes. Yes. Harry's vision tunneled. For a split second, he wasn't in Ollivander's. He was in a dark place smelling of stone and blood. He saw red eyes. He heard a laugh like glass breaking. And then, Harry snapped his focus like a whip. He drew a circle sigil in the air with his free hand, fast, precise. Go. Elden boundary flared around his skull like a halo. The whisper smashed against it and recoiled. Harry gasped, dropping the wand as if it burned. The wand hit the floor with a sharp crack. Silence. Fell so hard it felt like gravity changed. Ollivander stared, pale. Dumbledore's hand was halfway to his wand. His eyes were wide, not with surprise, but with dawning horror. Harry pressed 2 fingers to his scar, breathing hard. Then he straightened. His voice was hoarse but controlled. That wand, he said, staring at Ollivander, is connected to the thing inside me. Ollivander swallowed. The thing. Dumbledore's voice was low. It is complicated. Harry's eyes didn't leave the wand on the floor. It's not just a tool. It's a door. Ollivander's expression shifted, fear and fascination warring. Dumbledore stepped closer to Harry, speaking softly. Harry, you still need a wand to function in their classes. Harry's jaw tightened. Then I need a wand that doesn't feed it. Ollivander licked his lips, suddenly nervous. I have never seen a child refuse the Holly wand. Harry looked up, green eyes steady as stone. Then you're seeing it now, he said. Dumbledore's gaze softened, proud and worried at once. Ollivander hesitated, then hurried to the shelves like a man trying to outrun his own curiosity. Harry stood perfectly still, breathing through the ache behind his eyes. The anchor disc pressed cold and calming against his chest. He didn't know what Hogwarts would be like. He didn't know how many eyes would watch him, how many hands would reach for his story like it belonged to them. But he knew one thing with sharp clarity. If the wizarding world was built on doors, then Harry Potter had to learn which ones he was willing to open. And which ones he would seal shut forever. Ollivander returned with dust on his sleeves and a look like he'd just argued with the concept of fate, and lost. He held 3 boxes this time, stacked carefully, as if a sudden movement might wake something sleeping. This, Ollivander said, voice thinner than before, is unprecedented. Harry didn't blink. Try anyway. Dumbledore stood behind him, silent and watchful. Harry could feel the old wizard's attention like a weight, protective, guilty, calculating. Ollivander opened the first box. Aspen, he murmured. Dragon heartstring. 10 inches. Harry took it. The wand felt loud. Not in sound, but in presence. It buzzed against his palm like a hornet trapped in glass. The scar prickled. Harry pressed his thumb to the anchor disc beneath his robes and breathed. In, out. He flicked the wand. A burst of sparks shot out, bright and unruly, scorching the air. Ollivander winced. Oh, dear. Harry set it down gently. It's angry. It's enthusiastic, Ollivander corrected weakly. Harry's eyes stayed flat. Angry. Ollivander cleared his throat and opened the second box. Willow, he said. Unicorn hair. 9.5 inches. Harry held it. The wand felt softer. Quieter. For a heartbeat, his scar cooled. Then, without warning, the scar twitched like something behind it had leaned closer, sniffing at the connection. Harry's stomach tightened. He lowered the wand slowly, as if setting down a sleeping snake. No, Harry said. Ollivander swallowed. You didn't even try it. Harry looked at him. It tried me. Silence. Dumbledore's voice was low. Harry has unusual sensitivity. Ollivander's eyes glittered with a fearfully delighted kind of interest. Yes, I see that. He opened the third box, almost reluctant. Rowan, he murmured. Phoenix feather. 12 inches. Flexible. Dumbledore stiffened slightly. Harry stared at the wand. Another phoenix feather. Another door. He took it anyway. The moment his fingers closed around the wood, he felt it, a steady warmth, like candlelight in a room that wasn't trying to swallow him. His scar warmed, but didn't flare. Not hunger. Not pain. Just awareness. Harry raised the wand and, carefully, didn't force anything. He didn't push. He didn't demand. He simply traced a small circle in the air, the way he drew sigils. Golden sparks spiraled out, clean. Controlled, forming a perfect ring that hung for a breath before dissolving into nothing. Ollivander's shoulders sagged in visible relief. Oh, thank goodness. Harry blinked. That's it. Ollivander leaned forward, eyes bright. That's it. It responds to structure, to intention, to discipline. Harry's mouth tightened. And it doesn't. Not like the holly, Ollivander said quickly. No, this is separate. Dumbledore's gaze stayed fixed on Harry. How do you feel? Harry listened inward, the way he'd been trained. The scar was there, like a thorn, quiet for now. And the wand felt like a tool, not a trap. I feel, Harry said slowly, like it's mine. Ollivander's smile was shaky. Yes, that's what I was hoping you'd say. Harry paid without ceremony, and they left. Ollivanders with the Rowan wand tucked into his robes like a promise made carefully. Outside, Diagon Alley was still loud and bright and full of staring eyes, but Harry's anchor disc was steady against his chest. And the wand at his side didn't feel like it was whispering to anything inside him. For the first time since the holly wand had hit the floor, Harry could breathe without the taste of fear. Dumbledore walked him toward the leaky cauldron, then paused at the doorway. You'll write? Dumbledore asked. Harry studied his face. The man looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. Yes, Harry said. Dumbledore exhaled, as if he hadn't known he needed that answer. Good. Then, hesitating like someone unsure whether he'd earned the right. I'm glad, Dumbledore said softly, that you had a home. Harry's scar warmed faintly. Harry pressed his thumb to the anchor disc. And gave Dumbledore a single, careful truth. I did, he said. I don't plan on losing it. King's Cross Station was chaos in 1,000 directions. Muggles hurried with suitcases and coffee and loud voices, never seeing the owls in cages, the cauldrons being dragged, the children in robes. That should have drawn stares but somehow didn't. Harry stood near a pillar, saffron-toned robes under a plain travel cloak, and watched like he was observing an unfamiliar ecosystem. Wong had taught him this. Before you enter a new place, listen to it. Harry listened. He felt magic pulsing behind the brickwork, like a heartbeat hidden in stone. He felt the thin membrane between worlds, stretched tight but not breaking. And he felt something else too, subtle, bitter, almost metallic. Wizarding fear. Not directed at Voldemort, not even at Death Eaters. At change. Harry's hand drifted to his wand. Rowan. Phoenix feather. Flexible. Steady. He breathed. Then he walked toward the barrier between platforms 9 and 10. A red-haired family was gathered there, so many kids Harry couldn't count at once. The mother had a kind face and an exhausted smile. One of the boys, tall, freckled, was arguing about something. Another, shorter, redder, looked pale with nerves. Harry paused just long enough to memorize the route. Then he stepped forward, moving smoothly, and walked straight into the barrier. For a split second, the sensation was like passing through a thin sheet of cold water. Then, the world opened. Platform 9 3/4 unfolded in steam and sunlight and the gleam of a scarlet train that looked like it belonged in a storybook. The Hogwarts Express hissed like an impatient dragon. Harry didn't smile, but his chest loosened. The red-haired mother glanced at him and did a double take, not at his scar, not yet, but at the way he moved. Like he didn't need permission to exist. First year, dear? She asked kindly. Harry nodded. Yes. Her eyes flicked briefly to his forehead, caught the lightning scar, and widened. Oh, she breathed, hand flying to her mouth. Ha! RRY felt the attention spread like a ripple through water. Whispers started immediately. Harry Potter. That's him. Look, look. Harry's scar prickled like it hated being watched. He pressed his anchor disc. The prickling eased. The red-haired mother recovered quickly, the way decent people did when they realized I could become rude. She smiled gently. Well, she said, voice warm, you'll have a wonderful time. Hogwarts it's something. Harry looked past her at the train. It feels like a puzzle, he said. The mother blinked. A puzzle. Harry nodded, as if that explained everything. Good luck, she said. Slightly bewildered, Harry inclined his head politely and moved on. Inside the train, the corridors were cramped and crowded, the air thick with sweets and nervous laughter. Harry slid his trunk into an empty compartment with efficient movements and sat by the window. He didn't rush to make friends. He didn't fidget. He simply watched the platform like he was street UDing a battlefield before stepping onto it. A minute later, the compartment door slid open. A boy stood there, tall for his age, pale, with hair slicked back like he'd practiced looking superior in mirrors. Two other boys hovered behind him, thick-necked and eager. The pale boy's eyes flicked immediately to Harry's scar. His mouth curled. So it's true, he drawled. You really are Harry Potter. Harry didn't respond. The boy took that as permission to continue. I'm Draco Malfoy, he said, like the name should mean something. You'll soon find out some wizarding families are better than others. You wouldn't want to make the wrong sort of friends. Harry's eyes were calm. Is that advice? Draco blinked, not expecting the flat tone. It's a warning, Draco said, puffing slightly. You're famous, Potter. People will want to use you. Harry's scar warmed faintly, like it hated hearing the word use. Harry breathed, and the warmth steadied. That sounds like experience, Harry said. Crabbe and Goyle snickered like they didn't know why, but wanted to anyway. Draco's eyes narrowed. I'm offering you a chance too. Harry tilted his head slightly. To be owned. Draco's expression sharpened into offense. Excuse me. Harry's voice stayed even. You're not offering friendship. You're offering alignment. Like a ministry decree. Draco's cheeks flushed. You think you re above everyone just because you survived a curse. Harry studied him for a long moment. Then Harry asked, quietly, do you know what it's like to carry something inside your skull that whispers when doors open? The compartment went still. Draco's confidence flickered, just a fraction. He recovered with a sneer. Don't be dramatic. Harry nodded once, as if Draco had confirmed a hypothesis. Then we're done, Harry said. Draco's eyes flashed. You'll regret this. Harry's expression didn't change. Maybe, he said. But not today. Draco stared at him like he couldn't find a place to land his superiority. Then he snapped, come on, to his lackeys and left with the dignity of a boy who didn't realize dignity was earned. The door slid shut. Silence returned. Harry exhaled slowly. His scar cooled. Not because Draco was gone. Because Harry hadn't risen to meet the bait. That was a Kamar-Taj victory. A moment later, the door slid open again. This time, a boy with messy hair and a too big smile stood there. Holding a chocolate frog like a peace offering. Sorry, the boy said quickly. I saw Malfoy leave and I thought, you might want company. Harry looked at him. Freckles. Red hair. Nervous energy disguised as bravery. The boy extended the chocolate frog. I'm Ron. Ron Weasley. Harry glanced at the frog, then back at Ron. Is this diplomacy? Ron blinked. It's lunch. Harry nodded, accepting it with the seriousness of a treaty. Thank you. Ron sat, relief obvious. For a minute, they ate in silence. Then Ron blurted, so, are you really? He gestured vaguely at his own forehead. Harry chewed thoughtfully. Yes. Ron's eyes went huge. Blimey. Harry glanced out the window as the train began to lurch forward, steam billowing. I don't like being stared at, Harry said. Ron swallowed. Yeah, I can't imagine. Harry didn't say good or you're lucky. He just nodded once, like the conversation was another pattern to memorize. The train gathered speed. London slid away. Hills rolled in. And the moment the train crossed a certain invisible line, Harry felt it, sharp and unmistakable. A pressure. Not on his lungs, not on his skin. On his portals. Like the air itself had grown teeth. Harry's fingers twitched, wanting to test a sling ring out of habit. He didn't. He closed his eyes instead and listened. Wards. Old ones. Layered like armor. Hogwarts wasn't just a school. It was a fortress disguised as tradition. Ron noticed Harry's stillness. You okay? Harry opened his eyes. Yes. Then, after a beat, he added honestly. This place has walls I can't see. Ron looked confused. Isn't that normal? Harry stared at him. Ron shifted. I mean, Hogwarts has loads of weird stuff. Like staircases and ghosts and… Harry nodded slowly. Not those walls. The scar warmed faintly, like it approved of Hogwarts' defenses, or like it remembered them. Harry pressed his anchor disc until the warmth steadied. Outside, the countryside blurred past like a moving painting. Inside, Harry Potter sat in a train compartment with a boy who had offered him a chocolate frog like it mattered. And for the first time, Harry felt the truth settle heavy and clear. Hogwarts was full of doors. And something inside him was already counting them. The boat slid across the black lake like silent thoughts. Hogwarts rose ahead, towering. Lit with warm windows, ancient enough to feel like it had opinions about who was allowed inside. Ron sat stiffly beside Harry, trying very hard to look like he belonged even though his ears were red with nerves. Harry watched the castle the way he watched everything important, without rushing to name it. The wards pressed against his skin like invisible altitude. Not hostile. Protective. Old. Every stone felt layered, enchanted, reinforced, remembered. When the boats bumped the shore, students climbed out in awkward waves, laughing too loudly, whispering too fast. Clinging to excitement like it was armor. Harry stepped onto the ground and felt the castle notice him. His scar warmed faintly. He pressed the anchor disc beneath his robes. The warmth steadied, but didn't vanish. Ron elbowed him gently. This is it. Harry nodded. Yes. He didn't say it's beautiful, because beauty wasn't the first thing that came to mind. The first thing that came to mind was, this place is a maze that knows it's a maze. A tall witch in emerald robes waited at the foot of the slope, posture straight as a drawn blade. First years, she snapped, voice carrying like a bell. Over here. Professor McGonagall's gaze swept the group, efficient, assessing, then stopped on Harry. Her eyes tightened for the briefest moment. Not fear. Recognition. Harry met her gaze calmly. McGonagall's mouth thinned, and for a second Harry saw something human under the strictness, worry that had never fully left. Then she turned sharply. Follow me. They filed into the castle. Harry felt it immediately. The moment he crossed the threshold, the pressure shifted. Not just wards around a building, wards woven through it. Corridors that folded. Staircases that changed their minds. Portraits that watched like gossiping sentries. His instincts twitched, wanting to test the space. Wanting to map it. Wanting to know which doors were real and which were tricks. He didn't try a portal. Not with that pressure in the air, not with his scar listening. Instead he breathed and let the castle introduce itself on its own terms. Ron whispered, try not to stare at the suits of armor. They hate that. Harry glanced at a line of armored statues. Their visors seemed angled, slightly more toward him than the other students. Harry murmured back, they're staring at me. Ron looked alarmed. They are. Harry didn't answer. Because it wasn't just the armor. It was everything. The great hall hit like a wave. 4 long tables. Floating candles. A ceiling that held a night sky so perfect it felt like a lie. Thousands of eyes turned. Whispers rose instantly, names passing between lips like currency. Harry's scar warmed again. He pressed the anchor disc. The warmth steadied. But the attention didn't. McGonagall marched them to the front where a 3-legged stool waited, and on it, a patched, battered, absurdly small hat. The Sorting Hat. Harry stared at it. Ron whispered, that's the hat. Harry whispered back, it looks like it lost a fight. Ron snorted and immediately tried to turn it into a cough. McGonagall began calling names. Students stepped forward one by one. The hat dropped onto their heads, and it shouted houses with dramatic enthusiasm, like it enjoyed having opinions. Gryffindor, Slytherin, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw. Each time a table erupted in cheers. Harry watched the sorting carefully. He noticed patterns. The hat didn't just read what people wanted. It read what they feared. What they hid. Where Ermind naturally went when no one was looking. Which meant it wasn't only magic. It was psychology with a megaphone. Harry didn't like that. McGonagall called, Granger, Hermione. A girl wit. Bushy brown hair walked forward like she'd been preparing her whole life for this moment. She sat, posture perfect, hands clenched in her lap. The hat barely touched her head. Ravenclaw. Hermione's face lit up with relief and fierce pride. She marched to the Ravenclaw table like it was a battlefield victory. Harry's eyes narrowed slightly. Interesting. His instincts registered her as sharp. Quick. Hungry for knowledge. Not hungry for power the way Draco was. Hungry like a person trying to build certainty out of books. Harry respected that. McGonagall continued. Names blurred. Time passed. Then, Potter, Harry. The hall went very, very quiet. Even the candles seemed to flicker less. Harry felt the weight of every stare like hands trying to grab him. Ron's face went pale. Hermione stared openly, eyes bright with curiosity. Harry stood. He did not rush. He did not hesitate. He walked to the stool with the steadiness of someone who had been trained to enter rooms where his life might change. Because he had. McGonagall placed the hat on his head. For a moment, everything went dark. Then, a voice spoke inside his skull. Not like the scar's whisper. Not cold, not hungry. This voice was old and nosy and entirely too cheerful about it. Well. Harry didn't startle. He breathed. The hat hummed thoughtfully. That's unusual. Harry kept breathing. Most children's minds are like messy rooms. Yours is like a locked library. Harry thought, calmly, yes. The hat tried to push deeper. Harry felt it like fingers pressing against the inner walls of his focus. His scar warmed, reacting to intrusion. Harry pressed his anchor disc. The warmth steadied. The hat made a sound like a cough. Oh, you've got protections. That's not school magic. Harry didn't respond. The hat pressed again, more insistent. Harry's mind held firm, not from stubbornness but from training. You didn't let strangers walk into your thoughts. Not in Kamar-Taj. Not anywhere. The hat's voice sharpened with mild irritation. Now listen here, boy, I must sort you. Harry thought. Then ask properly. There was a pause. And then, unexpectedly, the hat's tone shifted. It became respectful. May I? Harry blinked once. He didn't like being put on display. He didn't like being forced into a choice in front of an audience that wanted a story, not a person. But Hogwarts was already pressing against him like a puzzle box. And you couldn't solve a puzzle without touching it. So Harry did something the Ancient One had taught him. He opened a door a finger width. Not enough to let someone take over. Just enough to let them see. Harry allowed the hat access to a small space, surface thoughts, controlled, steady. The hat immediately. Why surged toward that opening like a child peering into a crack. And then it hit the scar. The Horcrux fragment stirred, not with words, more like a snake lifting its head. The hat recoiled as if burned. Oh. The hall held its breath. Harry's scar flared hot. The hat's voice went very quiet. That should not be there. Harry thought, steadily, I know. The hat hesitated, then ventured again, careful now. It skimmed around the scar like a bird avoiding a storm cloud. And in that careful examination, it saw something else. Not the Horcrux. Harry. His discipline. His control. His quiet rage turned inward and tempered into focus. His refusal to be owned. The hat murmured, almost to itself. You are not what they expect. Harry didn't answer. The hat shifted. Gryffindor has courage, plenty of it. But you don't seek applause for bravery. A pause. Slytherin has ambition, sharp ambition. But your ambition isn't for status. Another pause. Hufflepuff has loyalty. You could fit there, if you wanted warmth more than truth. Harry felt the hat's attention settle, finally, into the place that made the most sense. Ravenclaw, the hat murmured. For the mind that builds bridges. For the one who wants to understand the map before he walks it. Harry's scar warmed, uneasy, but not furious. Harry thought, yes. The hat's voice grew louder, ready for the performance. Ravenclaw. The Ravenclaw table erupted in cheers. Hermione clapped instantly, eyes alight like she'd just been proven correct about something. Ron looked startled, then relieved, as if he'd been afraid Harry would be thrown into a snake pit. Harry stepped off the stool. And the moment the hat left his head, he felt the scar cool. But he also felt something else. The hat knew. Not the full truth, no one did, but it knew there was something wrong in him. That meant Hogwarts had just become more dangerous. Because secrets didn't stay secrets in a castle full of portraits and ghosts and gossip. Harry walked toward Ravenclaw. As he passed the staff table, he felt eyes on him. Dumbledore's gaze was soft, proud, worried. McGonagall's was tight with concern. Flitwick looked delighted, as if Harry were a riddle he wanted to solve. And then, Snape. Professor Snape stared at Harry like a man looking at a stain that refused to wash out. His eyes, black, sharp, flicked to the scar, then to Harry's calm face. And Harry felt it. Not a spell, not a curse. A kind of hostility that was personal and ancient. The scar warmed again, faintly. Harry pressed his anchor disc. He did not look away from Snape. Snape's lip curled, just slightly, as if he'd tasted something bitter. And then he looked away first. Harry filed that away. Hostile, dangerous, motivated. He reached the Ravenclaw table and sat. Hermione leaned in immediately, unable to contain herself. "That was incredible," she whispered. "The hat took ages. It never takes that long unless it's difficult." Harry glanced at her. "It asked permission." Hermione blinked. "It what?" Harry shrugged. "It's polite when it has to be." Hermione looked like she wanted to write that down. Ron appeared at the edge of the table, hovering awkwardly. He pointed helplessly between Harry and Hermione. "Can I?" Hermione scooted over. "Yes." Ron sat, exhaling as if he'd been holding his breath for an hour. Harry looked between them and felt something strange and unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not belonging. Not yet. But the beginning of a pattern. A team. Then the feast began. Food appeared in waves, golden roast. Steaming potatoes, breads that smelled like home even to someone who hadn't had a normal one. Ron grabbed a chicken leg like it might vanish if he blinked. Hermione tried tea. Be polite but failed and took 2 rolls at once. Harry ate slowly, watching the hall. Studying. Mapping. He kept noticing the ceiling, stars shifting subtly, like a living illusion. He kept noticing the walls, ward lines hidden in carvings. He kept noticing the way the torches flickered when students laughed too loud, like Hogwarts reacted to emotion. He kept noticing how his scars sometimes warmed in response. Like the thorn liked the castle's attention. Harry hated that most of all. After the feast, prefects herded Ravenclaws toward their tower. The staircases moved when they weren't watched. Portraits argued about directions. Ghosts drifted through walls like they owned them. Hermione kept whispering facts. Hogwarts was founded over 1,000 years ago. The moving staircases are enchanted. There are at least 12 secret passages, until Ron groaned. "Do you ever stop?" he asked. Hermione frowned. "Do you ever start?" Ron looked offended. Harry almost smiled. Almost. They reached a spiral staircase that seemed to judge them as they climbed. At the top, an archway waited, and there, an eagle knocker with bright, intelligent eyes. It spoke. "To enter, you must answer a question." Hermione straightened immediately, thrilled. The eagle asked, "Which came first, the phoenix or the flame?" Hermione opened her mouth. Harry spoke first, quietly. "Neither," he said. "They're a cycle. The phoenix is born from flame, and flame is reborn by phoenix." First is a false question. The eagle regarded him for a long moment. Then it swung open. Hermione's star ed at Harry like he'd just done magic without a wand. Ron whispered, "That was, actually brilliant." Harry shrugged. "It's geometry." Hermione blinked. "That's not." Harry walked inside. The on room was blue and bronze and full of books. A ceiling painted with stars. Windows looking out over moonlit grounds. It felt like a thinking person lived here. Harry liked it. He set his trunk near an empty corner and began unpacking with precise, efficient movements. Hermione watched him like she couldn't decide whether to be impressed or suspicious. Ron flopped into a chair and sighed like he'd survived a war. Harry reached into his robe and touched the anchor disc. Steady. Quiet. Then his fingers brushed the Rowan wand. And his scar warmed faintly, like something inside was still listening to the castle's doors. He closed his eyes, breathed, and drew a small boundary sigil in his mind. Just a line, just a circle. The warmth cooled. For now. He opened his eyes. Hermione was still watching him. "What?" Harry asked. Hermione hesitated, then blurted, "You're different than I thought you'd be." Harry's expression stayed calm. "Most people are." Ron yawned. "I thought he'd be taller." Hermione elbowed him. Harry looked at both of them. And for the first time since stepping into the Great Hall, he allowed himself a small, private thought. This might be survivable. Then, somewhere deep in the castle, a door creaked. Not a physical door, a metaphysical one, the kind Voldemort's fragment understood. Harry's scar warmed again, sharper this time, like a warning bell. Harry sat up straighter. Hermione noticed. "What is it?" Harry's voice went quiet. "Hogwarts," he said, listening inward, "just moved." Ron stared. "The staircases do that." Harry shook his head. "Not like that," he murmured, because the movement he felt wasn't stone. It was fate shifting in a castle full of secrets. And Harry Potter, raised by the Ancient One, had just been placed in the center of it. By the second week of classes, Harry had learned 3 important truths about Hogwarts. 1. The castle listened. 2. 3. The castle lied. 4. 5. The castle did both with the confidence of something that had outlived everyone who ever tried to argue with it. 6. The staircases moved when you weren't paying attention, and sometimes when you were. The portraits gave directions like they were bored and malicious. Even the air tasted different in different corridors, as if the walls had moods. Hermione called it enchantment density. Ron called it Hogwarts being a right weirdo. Harry called it a mandala with teeth. And because it had teeth, Harry treated it with respect. Which meant, he started mapping it. Not with ink at first, ink was too easy to steal, too easy to gossip about. He mapped it in his head, the way Wong had taught him to map a battlefield: routes, choke points, exits, pressure lines. He began noticing places where the wards were thickest. The Great Hall had a soft, warm weave, communal, welcoming, ancient. The Ravenclaw Tower had sharp, clean geometry, logic, puzzles, boundaries. But one place in particular felt wrong. A third-floor corridor, roped off with a warning sign that shouted out of bounds like it was trying too hard. Harry didn't even have to get close. Every time he passed the stairwell beneath it, his scar warmed like a compass needle twitching toward north. Not fear, not pain, recognition, hunger. Harry pressed his anchor disc until the warmth dulled, then kept walking like he hadn't noticed. But he filed it away. Something is behind that rope. Something that affects the fragment. And if it affected the fragment, it mattered. Charms. Class was the first place Harry felt comfortable. Professor Flitwick was small, bright-eyed, and moved like a conductor hearing music no one else noticed. Today, Flitwick announced, hopping onto a stack of books so he could see them better, "We begin with the levitation charm. Wingardium Leviosa." Feathers floated around the room like slow snow. Ron looked panicked. Hermione looked like she wanted to marry the textbook. Harry watched the spell structure as if it were a diagram: intent, pronunciation, wand motion, emotional consistency. He didn't like needing a wand, but he had learned quickly that wizarding magic responded to different rules. It was less geometry and more language. That didn't make it weaker. It made it different. Harry lifted his Rowan wand and traced the motion, precise and minimal. Wingardium Leviosa. His feather rose cleanly, no wobble, no flailing, hovering perfectly at eye level. Flitwick's face lit up. "Marvelous control, Mr. Potter." Several heads turned. Whispers started again. Harry's scar warmed. Harry pressed the anchor disc with his thumb and kept his expression calm. Hermione leaned over, eyes wide. "How did you do that so easily?" Harry glanced at her feather, still trembling. "You're trying to force it," Harry murmured. "Don't push. Invite." Hermione blinked. "Invite a feather." Harry nodded, dead serious. Ron groaned. Quote, "That's the weirdest sentence I've ever heard." Harry didn't smile, but something in his eyes softened. "You'll say worse when your feather attacks you." Ron stared. "Feathers don't attack." Ron's F. Either shot upward suddenly and smacked him in the nose. Hermione made a sound that might have been laughter disguised as a cough. Harry's mouth almost twitched. Almost. It wasn't charms that tempted Harry into trouble, though. It was the staircases. Because staircases were doors that pretended they weren't doors, and that was exactly the kind of thing the mystic arts hated. One evening, after dinner, Harry found himself stuck on the 7th landing with Hermione and Ron, watching the staircase ahead of them shift away like it had decided they were boring. Ron threw his hands up. "Brilliant. We're trapped. Again." Hermione scowled. "We're not trapped. We just have to wait until." The staircase moved again, drifting farther. Hermione's scowl deepened. Until it comes back. Harry stared at the gap. Not physically large. Not dangerous. But the pressure in the air between the landings was thick with warding, like invisible glass. Hogwarts didn't want people jumping. It wanted people obedient. Harry's scar warmed faintly, like it enjoyed Hogwarts being controlling. Harry pressed the anchor disc. He didn't like that reaction. He looked at the gap again. And then he D something he probably shouldn't have done. He took a half breath, focused his mind the way Wong taught him, and lifted his hand, not his wand. He didn't draw a portal. He didn't even try. Instead, he traced a small, tight sigil in the air, 2 circles intersecting at an angle. A mirror step shape. Hermione's eyes widened. Harry, what are you? Harry didn't answer. He shifted his weight forward and took a single step. Reality bent. Not like walking through a wall. More like walking through the idea of a wall. For a heartbeat, everything around him turned glassy, reflections layered reflections, like the world had become a hall of mirrors. Then he was standing on the other landing. Safe. Silent. The air snapped back to normal. Ron's jaw dropped. Hermione stared like she'd just watched someone rewrite a law of physics. Harry turned, feeling his scar pulse hot once, angry now, like the fragment had felt the mirror dimension and didn't like it. Harry pressed the anchor disc hard until the pulse dulled. Don't do that, Hermione whispered, voice half awe, half panic. Ron blurted, do it again. Harry exhaled slowly. I can't do it again right now. Hermione blinked. Why not? Harry's voice was quiet. Because Hogwarts noticed. And it had. The candles along the corridor flickered simultaneously, as if a signal had passed through them. Portraits turned their heads. A suit of armor's visor angled toward Harry with a slow, deliberate click. Hermione grabbed Ron's sleeve. We should go. Harry nodded once. But as they hurried down the corridor, Harry felt the aftertaste of mirror space lingering on his skin. And something else beneath it. A subtle pressure behind his scar. Like a cold eye had opened and then closed again. As if the fragment had tasted the mirror dimension and had made a note of it. Harry didn't tell Ron and Hermione that part. Not yet. Defense against the dark arts was a different kind of discomfort. Professor Quirrell stuttered through lessons like his own words were trying to escape him. We will begin with basic D defensive jinxes, he said, hands trembling as if he expected the chalk to bite. Harry watched him carefully. Not just his fear, his body language. Quirrell's shoulders were always slightly hunched, like he was protecting the back of his neck. His eyes flicked often, too often, to the corners of the room. And Harry's scar didn't warm around Quirrell. It didn't react at all. Which was somehow worse. The absence felt like silence where there should have been sound. Harry didn't like it. Quirrell asked students to practice simple shields. Most shields wobbled. Some fizzled. Harry raised his wand and didn't cast a wizard shield. He cast a hybrid, a wizard spell shaped by mystic discipline. Protega. A clean, translucent barrier snapped into existence, smooth and stable, like a circle drawn with a compass. The room went quiet. Quirrell stared at it too long. Then he looked away too fast. Very good, Mr. Potter, Quirrell stammered, voice strained. Why you must have practiced. Harry's voice was calm. Every day. Quirrell swallowed. Harry felt it again, the sense of being watched not by a teacher, but by something behind the teacher's eyes. The scar didn't flare, but the anchor disc went cold against his chest, as if warning him anyway. Halloween arrived like a tension headache. The castle decorated itself in pumpkins and floating bats, but the students' excitement had a sharp edge to it, as if joy was covering something else. Harry sensed it in the hallways. In the way professors' voices were tighter. In the way Filch prowled like he was expecting disaster. In the way the wards felt restless. That night, as the feast began, Quirrell burst into the great hall looking like his bones had forgotten how to stay together. Troll, he shouted. In the dungeons. Thought you ought to know. Then he fainted. Chaos exploded. Dumbledore stood and silenced the room with a single word. Prefects herded students like sheep. Harry watched the crowd surge and felt his scar warm faintly, not fear, but anticipation, like the fragment enjoyed the scent of panic. Harry pressed the anchor disc. Hermione wasn't with them. Ron noticed at the same moment Harry did. She's not here, Ron blurted, eyes wide. She said she was going to the bathroom earlier. Harry's stomach tightened. He didn't think. He acted. Come on, Harry said. Ron hesitated only a second, then followed. They slipped away from the crowd, moving against the flow of students. Hogwarts, corridors seemed to resist them, staircases shifting, doors sticking, but Harry's mapped routes helped. He didn't use the mirror step again. Not yet. Not when the castle was already on high alert. They found the bathroom by sound first. A low, wet snort. A heavy, dragging step. Then, a crash. The door exploded inward. A mountain of muscle and stink lurched into the corridor. The troll. Ron froze. Harry's scar warmed sharply. Not the troll. The panic. The chaos. The opening. Harry forced his breath steady. He lifted his wand and didn't aim to kill. He aimed to contain. He traced a circle in the air, tight and fast. Protega. A shield snapped into place between them and the troll, stable, clean. The troll's club slammed into it. The barrier held, then cracked like ice. Harry's arms jolted with the impact. His teeth clenched. His scar pulsed, hot, eager, like the fragment enjoyed the strain. Harry pressed the anchor disc with his thumb so hard it hurt. The pulse dulled. Harry shouted, "Ron, move!" Ron snapped out of it and darted sideways. Harry didn't maintain the shield. He shifted. He drew a different sigil with his free hand, small, angular. A mirror veil. The air in front of the troll shimmered for a heartbeat, and the troll stumbled as if the floor had tilted wrong beneath its feet. Not trapped. Not transported. Just, disoriented. Enough. Ron, gulping courage like air, grabbed Hermione's wand from where it had fallen and shouted the first spell he'd practiced 100 times badly. Wingardium Leviosa. The club rose, wobbled, then hovered. Ron's face went red with effort. Harry kept his focus on the troll, keeping the mirror veil flickering in front of its eyes like a distorted window. Hermione, pale and furious and alive, screamed, "Drop it!" Ron jerked his wand downward. The club crashed onto the troll's skull. The troll collapsed like a felled tree. Silence. Harry's shield faded. The mirror veil dissolved. Harry's arms trembled from strain. Hermione stood there shaking, then rounded on them like a storm. "You," she began, then stopped because her voice cracked. Ron swallowed. "You're welcome." Hermione wiped her eyes aggressively. I'm not thanking you." Harry met her gaze. "You can yell later. We need to leave before teachers arrive." As if Hogwarts had been waiting for that cue. Footsteps thundered in the corridor. McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell arrived together. McGonagall's eyes took in the unconscious troll, the shattered door, the 3 first-years standing too close to disaster. "What?" she hissed, "were you thinking?" Harry didn't flinch. "Containment," he said simply. Snape's gaze locked onto Harry like a hook. He looked at the wand. The calm posture. The disciplined breath. Then his eyes flicked, just once, to Harry's scar. Something cold moved behind Snape's expression. "Containment," Snape repeated silkily. "How?" Advanced. Harry's scar warmed faintly, reacting to Snape's tone like it recognized a threat. Harry pressed the anchor disc. McGonagall scolded. Quirrell babbled. Hermione lied about going after the troll alone to protect Ron and Harry. Harry watched Snape the whole time. Snape watched him back. 2 predators assessing each other, one obvious, one hidden. Later, when the castle finally settled into uneasy sleep, Harry lay awake in the Ravenclaw dormitory staring at the ceiling. The stars painted above were too peaceful. Hermione and Ron had become something like friends after tonight, messy, loud, loyal. Harry should have felt relieved. Instead, his scar kept warming in slow pulses. Not pain. Direction. Like a compass needle returning stubbornly to one point. 3rd floor. Out-of-bounds corridor. Something behind it calling to the fragment. Harry sat up quietly, careful not to wake the others. He pressed the anchor disc until his breathing was perfectly steady. Then he reached into his robe and pulled out a scrap of parchment. He drew a small map, not of corridors, but of pressure lines. Wards. Knots. Places where Hogwarts magic thickened like a scarred tissue over a wound. And every line, no matter how he traced it, seemed to bend toward the same point. Harry stared at the ink. Then whispered into the dark, not to the castle, not to the hat, not to any teacher. To himself. "I'm not your door." The scar pulsed once in response. And somewhere above him, beyond the sleeping corridors, a rope blocked a hallway that hid a secret that had already begun to cast a shadow. December arrived like a hush. Snow piled against Hogwarts windowsills and turned the grounds into a white silence broken only by owl wings and distant laughter. The castle felt warmer in winter, not kinder, exactly, but quieter. As if it enjoyed the way cold forced students indoors where rules were easier to enforce. Harry noticed the change in the wards. Less restless, more watchful, like Hogwarts had pulled its magic closer to its chest. His scar still tugged toward the third-floor corridor, though steady as a compass. Some nights it warmed in a way that wasn't pain, but direction. Like the Fragmi, NT knew something waited behind that rope and wanted Harry to go see it. Harry didn't go, not because he wasn't curious. Because he was trained. Kamar-Taj had drilled one lesson into his bones. Curiosity without timing is just another kind of trap. So Harry waited. And in the waiting, something else happened. Friendship. It was messy, loud, inefficient, completely unlike meditation. It happened anyway. Ron kept showing up in the Ravenclaw common room like the rules of houses were suggestions. Hermione kept, accidentally, sitting near Harry in the library, pretending it was coincident. While her eyes devoured every book within reach. Harry kept finding himself, not alone. It was unsettling. Also, quietly, stabilizing. Anchors. The Ancient One would have approved. The first time Harry realized Hogwarts was lying to them on purpose was the night he found the three-headed dog. It wasn't planned. It wasn't heroic. It was a simple, stupid accident involving Peeves, a misplaced suit of armor. And Ron's terrible sense of direction. They were hurrying back from a late study session, Hermione insisting, one more chapter, on basic counter curses, Ron complaining like he'd be personally betrayed by education, when a door at the end of a corridor swung open. Not creaked, swung, as if someone had pushed it from the inside and the door had decided to help. A gust of air rolled out, cold and sour. Harry froze. His scar warmed sharply, not the usual compass pull but a sudden, spiking alert. Ron whispered, "Why is that door open?" Hermione frowned. "It shouldn't be. That's the third-floor corridor." Harry's eyes narrowed. Out of bounds. Ron swallowed. "Then why are we here?" Hermione pointed accusingly. "Because you said you knew a shortcut." Ron hissed. It was a shortcut until the stairs moved. Harry's scar warmed again, harder this time, like the fragment had just caught the scent of something familiar. Harry pressed the anchor disc. The warmth dulled, but the sense of pull remained. "Close it," Harry murmured. Ron reached for the knob. The door swung wider, and something enormous breathed. A sound like bellows. Then, a growl that made the air vibrate. Hermione's face went pale. Ron's eyes went huge. Harry took one step back, instinctively, keeping his breathing steady. The creature inside shifted, and three heads emerged from the shadow, massive, drooling. Eyes reflecting torchlight like coins. Fluffy. Three jaws opened. Three throats rumbled. Ron squeaked, "That is not normal." Hermione whispered, That's a Cerberus." Harry didn't have time to ask how she knew. The dog lunged. Harry moved without thinking. He raised his wand and snapped a shield into existence. Protega. The barrier flared. The dog's front paws slammed into it. Claws scraping sparks. The shield held, then strained. Harry's arms shook. His scar pulsed hot, eager, like the fragment enjoyed the pressure. Harry pressed the anchor disc until his thumb hurt. The pulse dulled. "Back," Harry said, voice steady. "Slow." Ron stumbled backward. Hermione backed up, eyes locked on the dog like it might leap through the shield. Harry shifted his stance, martial posture. Feet grounded, and added something else beneath the wizard shield. A tight boundary sigil traced with his free hand, reinforcing the barrier's edges. The shield stopped cracking. Fluffy snarled and pawed, confused by a defense that wasn't behaving like normal Hogwarts magic. Then, one of the heads sniffed. And the scar warmed sharply again, almost pleased. Harry's stomach twisted. It recognizes this place. Harry didn't fight the thought. He filed it. "Now," Harry said, "run." They bolted. Harry dropped the shield at the last second so it didn't shatter, discipline. Not pride, and slammed the door shut behind them. They didn't stop running until they hit a safer corridor and leaned against a wall, gasping. Ron wheezed. 3 heads. Hermione panted. That was guarding something. Harry's scar warmed faintly, like a satisfied whisper. Harry pressed the anchor disc and stared at the floor, thinking. A trap, Harry said quietly. Or a lock. Ron wiped sweat off his forehead. Why would Hogwarts need a lock like that? Hermione's eyes sharpened. Unless it's protecting something valuable. Harry lifted his gaze. Or something dangerous. Hermione swallowed. Or both. They stood there in the corridor, 3 first years with too much knowledge and not enough permission. Harry felt the castle watching them. Not through eyes. Through wards. Through moving stone. Through the way the torches flickered slightly as if Hogwarts was breathing. Ron whispered, "We should tell a professor." Hermione nodded quickly. "McGonagall." Harry's voice was calm but firm. "And say what? That we were out of bounds and got chased by a 3-headed dog." Ron's shoulders slumped. "Right." Hermione's jaw set. "Then we'll find out what it's guarding ourselves." Ron stared at her. You're insane." Hermione snapped, "I'm logical." Ron looked at Harry desperately. "Tell her she's insane." Harry didn't answer immediately. Because his scar was still warm. Because the pull toward the 3rd floor corridor had just become specific. Because Kamar-Taj taught him one more rule. If something hidden keeps calling to the thorn inside you, you don't ignore it forever. You learn what it is, so it can't surprise you later. Harry finally spoke. "We don't rush. We investigate." Hermione blinked. "You're agreeing with me." Harry shook his head slightly. "I'm saying we do it correctly." Ron groaned. "That sounds worse." The investigation, at first, looked like Hermione's dream and Ron's nightmare. It meant the library. It meant whispering over books titled Curses and Counter-Curses, a practical guide in most potenti potions. It meant Hermione's eyes sparkling as she read aloud about magical protections and historical relics. It meant Ron asking, every 10 minutes, "Are you sure we're not just going to die?" Harry's contribution was different. He didn't just search for the answer. He searched for the shape of the problem. He mapped the pattern again, the ward pressure lines he'd drawn weeks ago. And now that he knew there was something physically behind that corridor, his mental map began to snap into clearer alignment. A knot, a lock, a protected core. Like Hogwarts had built a smaller sanctum inside itself. Hermione found the first meaningful clue. "The Philosopher's Stone," she whispered one evening, eyes wide. "It's real." Ron's mouth was full of pie. "The what?" Hermione kicked him under the table. Harry leaned closer. "Explain." Hermione's voice trembled with excitement. "Nicholas Flamel, he's a real alchemist. The stone turns metal into gold and produces the elixir of life." Ron swallowed, suddenly interested. "So, someone wants to steal it." Harry's scar warmed faintly. Harry's eyes narrowed. "And someone is trying to protect it." Hermione nodded quickly. "A 3-headed dog is exactly the kind of protection you'd use." Ron frowned. "But why is it here?" Harry's mind clicked. Because Hogwarts was a fortress. Because the stone was valuable. Because someone trusted Hogwarts more than Gringotts. Or, because Hogwarts wasn't just protecting the stone. It was using it as bait. Harry didn't say that out loud yet. Instead he asked, who would know about it? Hermione chewed her lip. "Professors. Dumbledore. Maybe Snape." Ron's face twisted. "Snape definitely." Harry's scar warmed in a different way, unpleasant, like it didn't like Snape's name. Harry pressed the anchor disc. "Or Quirrell," Harry said softly. Hermione blinked. "Quirrell. He's terrified of everything." Harry's voice stayed calm. "Fear can be performance." Ron looked unconvinced. "He fainted about a troll." Harry looked at Ron. "Or he distracted the hall at the perfect time." Ron went quiet. Hermione's eyes widened slowly. That's actually." Harry didn't finish the thought. He didn't need to. Because the castle had already started moving into a more dangerous rhythm. Christmas came. And with it, emptier corridors. Students left. The castle sighed with the relief of fewer footsteps. Harry stayed. Not because he had nowhere to go, Kamar-Taj was always open to him, but because the Ancient One had said, "Learn what your enemy knows." Harry wanted to see Hogwarts without the noise. Wanted to hear the wards more clearly. On Christmas morning, he found a gift at the foot of his bed. A long, thin package wrapped in plain paper. No card. Only a note tucked beneath it, written in careful handwriting. "Use this well." Harry unwrapped it and found soft, shimmering fabric that looked like woven moonlight. An invisibility cloak. Ron, who had stayed too, because the Weasleys couldn't afford to bring everyone home, made a strangled sound. Hermione's eyes went enormous. That's Harry, that's. Harry didn't need her to say it. He'd felt it. The cloak wasn't just magic. It was old magic. The kind that didn't hum like spells. The kind that simply was. Harry's scar warmed faintly, curious. Harry pressed the anchor disc. Then he looked at the note again. No name, but he knew whose quiet choice this was. Dumbledore. A door offered. A tool given, not an order. Harry folded the cloak carefully. He didn't trust gifts easily. But he trusted tools. Tools had rules. That night, when the castle was almost silent and Ewind pushed snow against the windows like impatient fingers, Harry made a decision. We're going, Hermione whispered, cloak draped over all three of them, her voice tight with excitement and fear. Ron's voice trembled. This is illegal. Hermione hissed, it's not illegal if we don't get caught. Ron whispered, that's what illegal means. Harry kept his breathing calm beneath the cloak. He didn't feel reckless. He felt prepared. They moved through corridors like shadows. Portraits muttered. A cat yawned from a windowsill and watched them too intelligently. Peeves drifted past once, humming suspiciously. And Harry held his breath until the poltergeist passed. At the third-floor corridor, the rope barrier hung like a taunt. Harry felt the scar warm, stronger now, like the fragment was leaning toward the door. Harry pressed the anchor disc until the warmth steadied. Hermione whispered, are you sure? Harry nodded. Ron whispered, no. Harry ignored that. They slipped under the rope and approached the door. Harry's hand hovered near the knob. The scar warmed again, sharp, hungry. Harry forced his breath steady. In, out, he thought, firmly, I decide what opens. Then he turned the knob. The door creaked. And Fluffy was there, not lunging this time, just, present. 3 heads lifted slowly, nostrils flaring. Ron made a tiny sound of pure terror. Hermione froze. Harry moved. He didn't draw a shield yet. He remembered something from Hermione's frantic reading earlier that day, an offhand line about Hagrid's love for strange beasts. Hagrid likes music, Hermione had said. Almost as a joke, Harry stared at Fluffy's heads. And noticed something else. The dog's ears twitched when it heard the wind. Not at the wind itself, at the rhythm. Harry pulled a small flute from his pocket. Ron stared. Where did you get that? Harry whispered, Kamar-Taj. Hermione whispered, stunned, why do you have a flute? Harry whispered back, discipline includes hobbies. Ron looked like he wanted to scream. Harry raised the flute and played. Not beautifully, but steadily. A simple, repeating pattern, a loop. A circle. A mandala made of sound. Fluffy's heads blinked. One head lowered. Then another. The third fought it for a moment, growling softly, then the rhythm caught it too. The dog's massive body sank to the floor with a sigh that shook dust from the beams. 3 heads slumped. Asleep. Ron stared like he'd witnessed divine intervention. You just. Harry didn't answer. His scar was warm, but not screaming. The fragment didn't like the situation. It also couldn't stop it. Hermione whispered, Reverend, that was. Harry gestured. Now. They moved. A trapdoor in the floor lay beneath Fluffy's bulk. Hermione found the ring handle and lifted. A dark hole yawned open. Cold air rose. Harry looked down. The darkness felt deep. Not physically. Magically. Hermione whispered, this is it. Ron swallowed hard. We can still leave. Harry's scar warmed, tugging. Harry pressed the anchor disc. Then he looked at Ron and Hermione. Anchors. He nodded once. We go together, Harry said. He climbed down first. They fell. Not far, but far enough to make Ron yelp. Harry hit something soft and wet. Vines. Thick as arms. They wrapped around his legs instantly. Hermione gasped. Devil's snare. Ron panicked and struggled. The vines tightened like they enjoyed fear. Harry's scar warmed sharply, as if the fragment liked this, like the chaos, like the constriction, like the sensation of being trapped. Harry pressed the anchor disc until his thumb ached. Then he forced himself still. No struggling, Harry said, voice steady. It reacts to panic. Ron wheezed, it's literally choking me. Harry breathed. In, out. He didn't try to blast it. He didn't try to portal out. Hogwarts wards pressed here like iron, and mirror space felt unstable, glassy, hungry to fragment. Instead, Harry did the simplest thing Kamar-Taj taught him. He made space inside his mind. He let fear rise. He watched it. He didn't obey it. Then he raised his wand as far as the vines allowed and spoke calmly. Lumos. Light flared from his wand, not a wild burst, but a clean, steady glow. The devil's snare hissed and recoiled slightly, loosened by the brightness. Hermione, catching on, force. Her own panicked down and cast fire, small, controlled flames. The vines shrank back like burned hands. Ron coughed and stumbled free, shaking. Harry climbed out last, chest tight, scar-warm and sulking. Hermione stared at him, breathless. You didn't panic. Harry wiped vine slime off his sleeve. Panicking is a choice. Ron stared, horrified. That's not true. Harry looked at him. It is when you've trained for it. Ron didn't have an answer. Hermione swallowed, eyes bright. We're really doing this. Harry looked ahead. A stone corridor opened into darkness. And Hogwarts wards shifted again, subtle, tightening. Like the castle had realized where they were. Like it was watching to see if they'd earned the right to continue. Harry's scar warmed once more, tugging. He pressed the anchor disc and whispered. Almost inaudible. I'm still not your door. Then he led them forward. Because the trapdoor behind them had already closed. And the only way out was through. The corridor beyond the devil's snare didn't feel like Hogwarts anymore. It felt like a vault. The air was colder, tighter, ward lines braided so densely into the stone that Harry could almost taste the geometry. The castle wasn't simply protecting something down here. It was testing the kind of people who tried to reach it. Hermione walked close, wand raised, breathing controlled but quick. Ron hovered at Harry's shoulder. Pale and determined in a way that made his bravery look like stubbornness. Harry pressed his anchor disc beneath his robes until his heartbeat settled into something usable. Then he led them forward. The corridor opened into a chamber lit by blue flame. A wooden door waited on the far side, and on a table beside it sat a small, battered broomstick, too small for a proper Quidditch match. But just big enough to be useful. Above them, wings fluttered. Hundreds of keys swarmed through the air like a living storm, metal glinting, paper-thin wings buzzing, the whole room humming with chaotic motion. Hermione's eyes widened. Flying keys. Ron stared upward, mouth slightly open. I hate this place. Harry didn't answer. He was watching the keys. Not for their shape, for their pattern. Chaos had rhythm if you listened long enough. The door's locked, Hermione said, pointing at the lock that gleamed like it had teeth. Ron squinted up. So we need the right key. From all that, Harry's scar warmed faintly, like the fragment enjoyed the idea of 1,000 doors. Harry pressed the anchor disc. Look for the one that's been used, Harry said calmly. Hermione blinked. Used. Harry nodded, eyes tracking the swarm. Bent wing. Scratched metal. A key that moves differently because it's damaged. Hermione's gaze sharpened instantly. She began scanning, lips moving like she was sorting the keys into categories in her head. Ron swallowed. And how do we catch it? Harry picked up the small broomstick and weighed it in his hands. It was light, unstable, cheap, not a nimbus, not even close. He didn't smile, but something in him settled anyway, because Kamar-Taj had taught him that tools didn't need to be perfect. They needed to be understood. I'll distract the swarm, Harry said. You two watch for the damaged key. Ron stared. You're going up there. Harry glanced at him. Unless you want to. Ron looked up at the hurricane of keys and immediately shook his head. Nope. Absolutely not. I am a ground-based wizard. Hermione grabbed Harry's sleeve for half a second. Be careful. Harry met her eyes. I will. Then he stepped onto the broom and kicked off the ground. It wobbled violently. Ron yelped. Hermione sucked in a breath. Harry tightened his core like Wong had taught him, adjusted his balance, and stopped fighting the wobble. He let it happen, then used it. He shot upward in a messy spiral that made half the keys scatter and the other half swarm him like angry insects. The buzzing filled his ears. Metal flashed near his face. Harry's scar warmed, sharp, unpleasant, reacting to the pressure, the speed, the sense of falling if he made one mistake. Harry pressed the anchor disc through his robes, thumb hard against the metal. And forced his breath steady even as the broom jolted under him. He raised his wand and didn't cast a big spell. Big spells were for show. He cast control. Arresto momentum. Not on himself. on the nearest cluster of keys. Their speed slowed for a heartbeat, just a heartbeat, enough to open a lane through the swarm. Harry darted through it. Below, Hermione shouted, "There! The one with the bent wing, left side." Ron pointed wildly. "It's got a dent. It's definitely got a dent." Harry spotted it. A single key fluttering lower than the others, its wing bent, its motion slightly uneven, like a bird with an injured feather. He angled the broom toward it. The swarm reacted immediately, keys converging, trying to shield it. Harry felt the room tighten like a fist. This was a test, so he answered like Kamar-Taj taught him. He didn't chase the key. He shaped the space around it. Harry traced a small circle in the air with his wand, tight, precise. Not a portal, a boundary, a brief, shimmering ring that disrupted the keys, flight paths just enough to create a pocket of stillness around the damaged key. The key faltered, confused. Harry lunged and snatched it out of the air. The swarm exploded back into motion, angry, buzzing, keys slamming against Harry's shoulders and arms like thrown cutlery. Pain sparked down his forearm. He hissed, almost losing grip. His scarf flared hot. For a moment he felt the fragment stir, use the chaos, open a door, do something reckless. Harry gritted his teeth and pressed the anchor disc until it burned cold against his thumb. He forced the thought down into stillness. Then he dove. The broom bucked and dropped like it wanted to kill him. Harry fought it just enough to keep from crashing headfirst. He hit the ground hard, knees jarring, shoulders slamming stone. Ron grabbed his arm. Hermione grabbed the key. "You got it," Ron said, half amazed, half horrified. "You actually got it." Hermione shoved the key into the lock. It turned. The door clicked open. Harry's breath came out slow, controlled. His scar cooled. Barely. They ran through before the keys could decide to follow. The next chamber was quiet. Too quiet. A giant chessboard sprawled across the floor, stone pieces towering over them like statues. Some were chipped. Some were stained dark, as if they'd been struck before. Ron stared like he'd just walked into a nightmare that spoke his language. "Oh," he breathed. "No." Hermione's voice tightened. "Wizard chess." Harry stepped onto the edge of the board and felt the enchantment snap his ankles into place like invisible chains. This wasn't a room. This was a contract. Ron swallowed. "We have to play." Hermione's eyes flicked between the pieces. "We can't just walk around." Ron shook his head slowly, awe and dread mixing. "Not if you want to live." Harry's scar warmed faintly, responding to the word live like it enjoyed having leverage. Harry pressed the anchor disc. Ron stepped forward, eyes scanning the board with a sharpness Harry hadn't seen in him during textbooks or potion lists. This was Ron's world, strategy and sacrifice, instinct and timing. Ron looked at them, suddenly serious. "You two listen to me." "Exactly." Hermione opened her mouth, ready to argue. Ron cut her off. "This isn't a library puzzle, Hermione." Hermione froze, offended, then saw Ron's expression and shut her mouth. Ron pointed. "You," he nodded at Hermione, "take the bishop." Hermione hesitated, then stepped onto the indicated square. A stone bishop shifted aside, granting her space like it acknowledged her role. Ron pointed at Harry. "You take the knight. That square." Harry moved where Ron said. A stone knight clanked into position behind him, towering and silent. Then Ron stepped onto the board like he owned it. "I'll be the king," Ron said quietly. Hermione's eyes widened. Ron's voice was tight. "Just trust me." The chess pieces around them came alive. Heads turned. Swords lifted. Hooves scraped stone. A massive queen angled toward Harry, its stone face carved into something that looked almost hungry. Harry's scar warmed. Harry breathed. Ron raised his wand like a commander. "Okay. We move." The game began. It was violent. Pieces didn't simply take each other, they destroyed each other, stone exploding, dust rolling, heavy impacts shaking the floor. Hermione flinched when a rook smashed a pawn into rubble. Harry watched the board not as a game, but as a battlefield. He felt the room's rules, every move binding, every pause punished. Ron's voice cut through the chaos with absolute clarity. "Knight to e5. Harry moved because Ron said so. A stone piece swung a sword at him as he shifted squares. The blade passed through air where his head had been a heartbeat before. Harry didn't react with fear. He reacted with timing. Hermione held her position, face pale but determined, following Ron's instructions without argument now. Minutes stretched like hours. Then Ron's breathing changed. He saw the endgame. I can get us through, he said, voice tight. But I have to open the path. Hermione's eyes went wide. What do you mean? Ron swallowed, hard. One of us has to be taken. Harry's scar warmed sharply, like the fragment liked the taste of sacrifice. Harry pressed the anchor disc and forced his thoughts calm. Ron looked at Harry, just for a second, like he was apologizing. Then Ron said, when I tell you, you run. Don't stop. Hermione's voice cracked. Ron, no. Ron snapped, Hermione. The shout shocked her into silence. Ron took a breath, then moved his wand. Queen to H3. The Stone Queen lunged. Ron stepped into its path. Hermione screamed his name. Harry's body tried to move. Ron shouted, go. The Queen's stone sword swung. Ron flew backward as if punched by a giant. He hit the ground with a sickening thud and didn't move. The board went still. The pieces froze, as if the game acknowledged the sacrifice. A path opened. Hermione's eyes were flooded with tears. Harry's scar flared, pain and anger and something else, something the fragment tried to twist into rage. Harry pressed the anchor disc until his thumb went numb. He grabbed Hermione's wrist. We move, he said, voice low and steady. Hermione looked at Ron, shaking. We can't leave him. Harry's gaze didn't waver. If we don't go, he dies for nothing. That wasn't cold. That was discipline. Hermione's sob caught in her throat. She nodded once, sharp and furious. They ran through the opening. The chessboard behind them stayed silent. Ron lay motionless in the dust. Harry didn't look back. He couldn't afford to. The next room smelled like chemicals and logic. A table held 7 bottles, different shapes, different sizes, glinting under torchlight. Beside them sat a parchment with a riddle written in neat script. Hermione's eyes locked onto it like it had insulted her. This, she breathed, is a logic puzzle. Harry's scar warmed faintly. Harry pressed the anchor disc and watched Hermione read. Her lips moved silently as she processed it, brows knitting. Eyes flicking between bottles and words. Hermione inhaled sharply. There's a potion to go forward, she said, voice trembling with speed. 1 to go back, 2 are poison, 3 are wine. Harry glanced at the bottles. Hermione's hands hovered, then moved decisively. This one, she said, pointing. Small. The forward potion is the one that's. She stopped, swallowing. It's the smallest, Hermione finished. Forcing herself steady. Harry didn't question her. He trusted her mind the way Ron had trusted his. Hermione grabbed a bottle, then looked up at Harry. You, she whispered, voice breaking, have to go on. Ron needs help. I need to go back. Harry's chest tightened. His instinct screamed to keep her with him. Anchors weren't meant to be cut loose. But Ron was unconscious behind them. And if a professor found Ron alone down there? Harry forced his breathing calm. He nodded once. Go. Hermione's eyes shone. Be careful. Harry met her gaze. You too. Hermione drank the bottle meant to go back. She took a step, then paused. Harry, she whispered. He looked at her. Her voice was raw. Don't be a hero. Harry's scar warmed as if offended. Harry pressed the anchor disc and replied, quietly. I'm not trying to be. Hermione nodded, then vanished into the black flames, heading back toward Ron. Harry turned to the last bottle. The forward potion. He drank. It tasted like cold air and commitment. Black flames licked around him without burning. He stepped through. The final chamber was small. Stone walls. A fire burning low. And at the far end, a mirror. Tall. Ornate. Old enough to feel like it had opinions too. The mirror of her eyes. Harry recognized it instantly, not from books, but from the way his scar reacted, warm and tense. Like the fragment didn't know whether to fear it or worship it. And beside the mirror stood Professor Quirrell. He wasn't stuttering now. He wasn't trembling. He was smiling. I wondered, Quirrell said softly. How long it would take you. Harry's body went still. His breath remained steady. His wand was already in his hand. Where's the stone? Harry asked calmly. Quirrell's smile widened. Always direct. Dumbledore truly did raise you differently. Harry's scar warmed sharply at Dumbledore's name, like the fragment disliked it. Harry pressed the anchor disc. Dumbledore isn't here, Harry said. Quirrell's eyes gleamed. No, he had other business. A lure. A distraction. A trap. Harry's mind clicked. He removed the strongest piece from the board. Quirrell stepped closer, voice almost kind. You've been peeking behind doors since you arrived. Harry didn't move. You put the doors there. Quirrell's smile thinned. The headmaster put protections. I simply followed the scent of opportunity. Harry's scar flared hot. Not Quirrell. Something behind Quirrell. A pressure in the air like a cold hand on the back of Harry's neck. Harry felt it the way he'd felt it in the sanctum years ago. A presence that wasn't fully there. A splinter trying to be whole. You're not alone, Harry said quietly. Quirrell's eyes glittered. Then he lifted his hand. And began unwrapping the turban around his head. Harry's stomach tightened. The cloth fell away, and a face stared out from the back of Quirrell's skull, pale, distorted, red-eyed, mouth curved in a cruel parody of life. Voldemort. The fragment behind Harry's scar surged like a starving thing smelling its source. Harry's scar burned. A whisper slammed into his mind. Home. Open. Harry's vision blurred for a heartbeat. His hands trembled. He pressed the anchor disc so hard it bit into his skin through fabric. He breathed. In. Out. The world steadied. Voldemort's mouth curled. Ah, there you are. Harry forced his voice calm. You can't take him, Voldemort purred from Quirrell's head. He belongs to me. Harry didn't argue. He didn't shout. He took one careful step backward, toward the mirror. Quirrell moved to block him. Harry raised his wand, not to kill, not to duel like a storybook hero. To contain. Protega. A shield snapped between them, clean, stable. Coup. Quirrell's hands sparked with violent magic, slamming into the barrier. The shield groaned, cracking at the edges. Harry's arms shook. The scar flared again, hungry and furious, like the fragment wand. Harry to open and let Voldemort fill the crack. Harry refused. He thought, fiercely, I decide. Voldemort hissed. You feel it, don't you? The piece of me in you. It wants to come back. Harry's throat went dry. He kept the shield up. Quirrell's magic battered it. Harry's boundary line held, barely. Then Harry did something risky. Not a portal. Not a full mirror dimension step. Hogwarts wards here were thick as iron. But a veil. He traced a tight sigil with his free hand, subtle and fast, and the air between him and Quirrell shimmered, reflections warping, space bending just enough to distort aim. Quirrell's next blast skewed sideways and scorched the stone wall instead of Harry's chest. Voldemort snarled. Tricks. Harry didn't respond. He shifted again, backing closer to the mirror. Because he understood what this room was. Not a battlefield. A final lock. Quirrell lunged, trying to grab him. Harry's scar screamed. Voldemort's voice poured into his skull like poison honey. Open. Let me in. I'll make you strong. Harry's breath caught. Then his eyes flicked to the mirror. And he saw, through its surface, something that shocked him. Not glory. Not riches. Not applause. He saw himself standing in Kamar-Taj, small and safe, the Ancient One's hand on his forehead, the gold stitching around his scar steady and quiet. He saw Wong behind him, solid as stone. He saw Hermione and Ron beside him, messy and alive. He saw anchors. Not what he wanted, what he needed. Harry realized the mirror wasn't showing desire. It was showing the truth your heart refused to admit. And his truth was this. He didn't want to defeat Voldemort to be a hero. He wanted to defeat Voldemort so he could keep his doors closed. So he could live. Quirrell grabbed Harry's wrist. Harry's skin went cold. And then, pain. Not from Quirrell's grip. From Quirrell's touch. Because Lily's protection still lived in Harry's blood like a law the universe had written in fire. Quirrell screamed. His hands blistered where they touched Harry. Voldemort shrieked through him, furious. Kill him. Voldemort snarled. Use the boy, use the fragment, open him. The fragment behind Harry's scar surged again. Tempted by the proximity of its source. Harry's vision flickered. His breath shook. He pressed the anchor disc and clung to the only rule that mattered. I am not your door. Harry grabbed Quirrell's arm. Not in rage. In certainty. Quirrell screamed louder, smoke rising from his skin. Voldemort's voice turned desperate. Stop. Stop. Harry held on. Pain in his scar spiked like a lightning strike. The room spun. Then, without understanding how, Harry felt something cold and heavy slide into his pocket. A weight like a secret. The stone. He didn't have time to question it. Quirrell collapsed, skin burned, breath ragged. Voldemort's face twisted with hatred. You thief! The fire in the room guttered. The air went suddenly wrong, pressure shifting. Like a storm forming in a sealed space. Voldemort's presence pulled backward, unraveling from Quirrell's body like smoke caught by a wind no one could see. He didn't die. He escaped. But not before his red eyes locked on Harry's scar. On the place where the fragment inside Harry responded like a starving mouth. Voldemort whispered, venomous and satisfied. I will return for what is mine. Then the presence snapped away. Quirrell went still. Harry's legs buckled. The anchor disc was ice against his chest. His scar throbbed like an open wound. He tried to breathe. The room tilted. The mirror of Arised reflected him, small, shaking, alive. And then Harry Potter, raised by the Ancient One, fell into darkness with the Philosopher's Stone heavy in his pocket and Voldemort's promise burning behind his eyes. Harry woke to the smell of clean linen and potion fumes. For a heartbeat, he didn't know where he was. The ceiling above him was white, not star-painted. The air was warm, not mountain cold. His body ached like he'd been folded wrong and left that way. Then the memories hit in a sharp, orderly sequence. Keys, chess, black flames, mirror, Quirrell's hands burning, a second face, red eyes, a whisper inside his skull screaming home. Harry's eyes snapped open fully. The hospital wing stretched around him in neat rows, beds, curtains, the soft clink of glass. Madame Pomfrey dozed at a desk like a hawk pretending to be asleep. Harry didn't move. He listened. His scar throbbed, not pain, not heat, something deeper. Like the thorn behind it was restless, pacing in a cage. Harry slid 2 fingers to his anchor disc beneath the blanket. Cold, steady. He breathed in, out. The throbbing eased, just a fraction. You're awake. The voice came from the chair beside his bed. Albus Dumbledore sat there as if he'd been part of the room the entire time, hands folded, eyes gentle, expression tired in a way Harry recognized now, the fatigue of someone carrying too many secrets. Harry didn't sit up. He didn't flinch. He simply said, Quirrell was Voldemort. Dumbledore nodded. Yes. Harry's gaze stayed sharp. You knew the stone was here. Dumbledore paused. Then, honest, as he'd promised, he said, yes. Harry's jaw tightened. You used Hogwarts like bait. Dumbledore's eyes softened, but he didn't deny it. I used Hogwarts like a fortress. And I hoped the protections would be enough. Harry's scar warmed faintly, angry, resentful, like the fragment enjoyed hearing distrust. Harry pressed the anchor disc until the warmth steadied. Hope is not a plan, Harry said quietly. Dumbledore's mouth twitched, sad. No, it is not. Silence hung between them. Harry finally asked the question that mattered. Where are Ron and Hermione? Alive, Dumbledore said at once. Bruised, frightened, proud in that reckless way children often are. Miss Granger is currently giving Madame Pomfrey a lecture on safety protocols. Mr. Weasley is Rico, varying from a shock that will make his mother furious. Harry exhaled slowly. Anchors intact. Good. Then Harry's hand slid toward his robe, toward his pocket, because he remembered the weight. The stone. His fingers found nothing. His breath sharpened. Dumbledore saw the movement. The stone is safe, Dumbledore said gently. Nicholas Flamel and I have made arrangements. It will not remain at Hogwarts. Harry's eyes narrowed. It came to me. Dumbledore nodded again. It did. Harry's voice stayed steady. How? Dumbledore leaned back slightly, as if choosing words carefully. You stood before the mirror of Arised. He said. A dangerous object. It shows not what you are, but what you want most. Harry's scar warmed faintly, curious, hungry, like the fragment wanted to argue. Harry pressed the anchor disc. Dumbledore continued. Many would desire the stone to become rich, or famous, or immortal. If you had wanted it for yourself, you would not have received it. Harry remembered what he'd seen, not trophies. Not applause, Kamar-Taj. The Ancient One's hand. Wong's steadiness. Ron and Hermione alive beside him. He swallowed. I didn't want it, Harry said. Dumbledore's eyes were gentle. You wanted to keep it from Voldemort. Harry's scar pulsed once, angry. Harry breathed through it. So the mirror gave it to me, Harry said slowly, because my desire was protection. Dumbledore nodded. A very rare kind. Harry stared at the ceiling. He could still feel Voldemort's presence in that room, thin, desperate, poisonous. He touched me, Harry said quietly. And he burned. Dumbledore's gaze softened further, and for a moment Harry saw pure grief behind the calm. Your mother's protection remains in your blood. Love, in the oldest sense of magic, is not an emotion. It is a law. Harry's voice was flat. Mystic arts didn't do that. No, Dumbledore agreed. Some magic is older than geometry. Harry didn't argue. He filed it away. Two systems. Two kinds of truth. Two kinds of cost. Then Harry looked back at Dumbledore. Is Quirrell dead? Dumbledore's face tightened. Yes. Harry's chest went strangely cold. He wasn't sad for Quirrell. He was unsettled. Because death was heavy. Because Kamar-Taj didn't treat life like a coin to spend easily. Because Harry hadn't meant to kill anyone tonight. Dumbledore watched him carefully. You did not kill him out of malice. Harry's voice was quiet. I still killed him. Dumbledore didn't soften it with a lie. Yes. Harry swallowed. And Voldemort escaped. He did, Dumbledore said. In a weakened state. Less than a ghost. More than nothing. Harry's scar warmed sharply at that, like the fragment wanted to reach for its source again. Harry pressed the anchor disc hard and forced his breath steady. Dumbledore's eyes flicked briefly to Harry's forehead. It reacted strongly to him. Harry didn't deny it. It tried to open. Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. Did it succeed? Harry's eyes stayed steady. No. Something in Dumbledore loosened, like a man who had been holding his breath for 10 years. Good, he said softly. Harry watched him, then asked the question had been sharpening inside him since the sanctum. What am I to him? Dumbledore hesitated. Harry didn't blink. Finally, Dumbledore said, a connection. A possibility. A wound he thinks he owns. Harry's mouth tightened. He said I belong to him. Dumbledore's voice went very quiet. Voldemort believes all power belongs to him. It is his most consistent delusion. Harry looked away, staring at the white ceiling again. He thought of the whisper in his skull. Open. He thought of the way the fragment had surged when Voldemort was near, like a magnet finding its missing half. Then Harry asked, very carefully. Why didn't the Ancient One remove it? Dumbledore's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in thought. She spoke to me once, years ago. She said your condition was entangled. Harry's scar throbbed faintly. Dumbledore added, I did not understand what she meant at the time. Harry whispered, I do. Because he had felt it in the mirror space inside his mind. The crack, the thorn, the way it clung to him like it had roots. Dumbledore leaned forward slightly. Harry. Harry turned his head. Dumbledore's expression was earnest. You did something extraordinary tonight. You faced Voldemort. You kept him from the stone. You survived. Harry's voice was calm. Surviving isn't winning. Dumbledore's mouth twitched. No. But it is the first requirement for winning later. Harry held his gaze for a long moment. Then he said, bluntly, you sent me into a war before I had a wand. Dumbledore flinched. Tiny, real. Yes. Harry's scar warmed faintly, like it enjoyed the accusation. Harry pressed the anchor disc and kept his voice steady. I won't be used, Harry said. Dumbledore nodded slowly. Then do not let us use you. Make us allies instead. Harry's eyes narrowed. That requires honesty. Dumbledore didn't argue. Yes. A quiet agreement formed, thin as paper, but real. Then Dumbledore stood. Rest. Madame Pomfrey will murder me if you collapse again while I'm in the room. Quote. Harry's mouth almost twitched. Almost. Before Dumbledore left, Harry asked one last question. Who sent me the cloak? Dumbledore paused at the curtain. Then, without turning, he said. A man who once borrowed it and regretted returning it. And he was gone. That night, long after Madame Pomfrey forced him to drink something bitter and long after the hospital wing sank into candlelit quiet. Harry lay awake. He pressed 2 fingers to his scar. It was calm. But calm didn't mean safe. It meant contained. And containment had to be maintained. Rai closed his eyes and did something he hadn't done since arriving at Hogwarts. He reached. Not outward. Inward. He found the quiet space the Ancient One had shown him, the dark room inside his mind with the crack in the wall. The crack was there, the thorn pressed behind it. Waiting. Harry drew a boundary line in his thoughts, circle within circle, and held it steady. Then, softly, he whispered. You don't get to come home through me. The thorn didn't answer, but he felt it listening. Spring arrived eventually, and with it, exams and sunlight and a castle pretending to be normal again. The stone was removed. Flamel's name stopped being whispered. Quirrell became a rumor. Ron walked with a slight stiffness for a week and then started acting like sacrifice was something you did and complained about later. Hermione's hand shook once when she thought no one was watching, and then she clenched it and went back to the library with a vengeance that looked like courage. Harry watched all of it. He learned. He didn't celebrate. Because Voldemort wasn't gone. He was simply elsewhere. And the fragment in Harry's scar knew it. Sometimes, when Hogwarts doors creaked late at night, Harry would feel a faint pull behind his forehead, like a compass that had memorized the direction of a monster. Every time, Harry pressed his anchor disc and reminded himself, I decide what opens. When summer finally came, Harry did not board a train to a suburban street. He stepped through a portal, carefully, anchored, precise, back into the mountain air of Kamar-Taj. The moment his feet touched the stone courtyard, the castle ward pressure vanished from his skin like a tight glove removed. He exhaled without realizing he'd been holding it for months. Wong approached, hands folded into his sleeves. He looked Harry over once, scratches faded, posture steady, eyes older. You survived, Wong said. Harry nodded. Yes. Wong's gaze sharpened. And, Harry pressed the disc beneath his robes, habit now, and said the truth that mattered most. It tried to open. Wong's expression tightened. Before he could speak, the air behind Harry shifted. The Ancient One appeared on the courtyard steps like she'd always been there, and Harry's eyes had simply learned to notice her. She looked at him, not at his scar first. At his eyes. How did it feel, she asked quietly, to stand near your enemy? Harry swallowed. It felt like being a door with someone pounding on the other side, he admitted. The Ancient One nodded once, as if that confirmed something she'd already suspected. And did you open? Harry's voice was steady. No. The Ancient One's gaze softened, just a fraction. Good, she said. Then her eyes flicked to Harry's scar. And for the first time since he'd returned, the golden stitching she'd placed years ago pulsed faintly, reacting to something it could sense from far away. The Dark Lord has moved again, she murmured. Harry's stomach tightened. He escaped. Yes, she said simply. And he will seek more doors. Harry's fingers curled slightly. Then I need to learn faster. Wong's mouth tightened. Faster is not always better. Harry didn't look away. It is when the other side is hungry. The Ancient One stepped closer and placed 2 fingers lightly on Harry's forehead. Not to pull him astral. Not to examine. Just to steady. You did well, she said quietly. Not because you fought. Because you held. Harry's throat tightened unexpectedly. He wasn't used to praise. Not real praise. He nodded once. What now? The Ancient One's eyes turned toward the far mountains as if she could see the timeline braided into the sky. Now, she said, Hogwarts will try to become normal again. Harry's scar warmed faintly, uneasy. And normal, the Ancient One continued, is when hidden things grow bold. Harry felt a chill. Wong asked, do you sense it? Harry closed his eyes and listened. He didn't hear Voldemort. Not directly. But he felt something else. A thin, papery whisper at the edge of a door not yet opened. A memory of ink. A hunger shaped like a book. Harry's eyes opened slowly. There's another anchor, he said quietly. Another object. The Ancient One's gaze sharpened. Yes. Harry swallowed. A diary. Wong stiffened. The Ancient One's expression didn't change, but the air around her felt suddenly colder. Like a storm gathering behind calm. Then, she said softly, Year 2 will not be about a stone. Harry's scar warmed once, sharp and warning. Harry pressed the anchor disc and lifted his chin. It'll be about a soul, he said. The Ancient One nodded. And this time, she said, the enemy won't come wearing another man's face. Harry felt the truth settle like iron. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rang. And far away, back in the world of wands and corridors, an innocent hand would soon be given a diary that wanted to be read. Kamar-Taj did not ask Harry how Hogwarts felt. It asked what Hogwarts had done to him. The difference mattered. Wong trained him harder that summer, not with more complicated sigils, but with the same lesson drilled deeper until it became bone. A door is not a door. It is an agreement. And you do not sign agreements while afraid. Harry spent mornings in meditation until his legs went numb and his thoughts stopped trying to run. He spent afternoons sparring until sweat stung his eyes and his body learned to move without anger. At night, the Ancient One made him sit with the scar's whisper without fighting it, without feeding it, until the whisper grew bored of getting no reaction. Somewhere in the middle of July, Harry managed something new. Not a bigger portal, not a stronger shield, something subtler. He learned to make a mind anchor without touching the disc at his chest. A quiet internal ring, circle within circle, he could tighten around his thoughts when pressure rose. When he told Wong, Wong only nodded and said, "Good. Now learn to do it while someone is yelling at you." Harry didn't laugh. He trained until yelling stopped mattering. And when August ended, the Ancient One looked at Harry and said, "This year, you will meet a door that does not look like a door." Harry's scar warmed faintly, uneasy. Harry's voice stayed steady. "A relic." The Ancient One's eyes sharpened. "A lie." King's Cross was louder than Harry remembered. Not because he'd forgotten the sound of crowds. Kamar-Taj had visitors, students, pilgrims, but because London had a frantic rhythm that made Harry's skin itch. Too many minds moving too fast. Too many emotions uncontained. Ron was waiting near a pillar, waving both arms like he feared Harry might vanish if he didn't be loud enough. Hermione arrived 10 minutes later with a stack of books that made Ron groan on sight. "Did you read those all summer?" Ron asked, horrified. Hermione sniffed. "Some people enjoy improving." Ron pointed at Harry. "He improved by punching things." Harry corrected calmly, "By breathing while punching things." Ron stared. "That's worse." They moved toward the barrier between platforms 9 and 10. Harry's scar was quiet. The anchor disc rested under his shirt like a steady heartbeat. Then, a snap of pressure. Not from the crowd, from the air itself tightening around him. Harry froze mid-step. Ron bumped into him. "Oi, what are you doing?" Harry didn't answer. His eyes narrowed, scanning. He felt it. A small presence, hidden in the bustle like a pebble in a river. Watching, waiting, and then a thin, whispery voice hissed from nowhere. "Harry Potter must not go back to Hogwarts." Ron jerked. "What was that?" Hermione stiffened. "Did you hear?" A creature popped into existence beside a luggage trolley like reality had coughed. Big eyes, long ears, clothes like a pillowcase. "House elf." Ron yelped. Hermione gasped. Harry simply stared. The elf wrung its hands. "Harry Potter is in great danger." Harry's scar warmed faintly, not pain, annoyance, like the fragment disliked surprises. Harry tightened his internal mind anchor. "Who are you?" Harry asked calmly. The elf bowed so low its ears flapped. "Dobby, sir. Dobby has come to save Harry Potter." Ron blinked rapidly. "What is that?" Hermione whispered, stunned. "A house elf. They're bound to wizarding families." Harry's eyes stayed on Dobby. "What danger?" Dobby's eyes bulged. "Terrible things, sir. Dark things. Someone is plotting to make Harry Potter suffer." Harry's scar warmed sharper at the word dark. Harry didn't flinch. He breathed. "Then tell me who," Harry said. Dobby's hands twisted. "Dobby can't, sir." Dobby's hands, Dobby's mouth. "Dobby is bound." Harry watched Dobby's panic like he watched a storm cloud forming. He didn't blame the elf. He blamed the chains. "Show me," Harry said simply. Dobby hesitated. Then Dobby did the only thing he could. He blocked the barrier. When Harry stepped toward platform 9 3/4, the air in front of the wall hardened like invisible stone. The brick refused him. The door became a wall. Ron slammed his trolley into it by accident and rebounded with a yelp. Hermione's eyes widened. "It's sealed." Harry felt the magic. House elf magic, old and absolute in its own rules, nothing like wizard spells and nothing like mystic geometry. It didn't work the same way. It insisted. Ron went pale. "We're going to miss the train." Hermione looked furious. "Dobby, you can't just." Dobby slapped his own face hard. "Dobby must, miss. Dobby must." Harry's scar warmed, sharp and irritated. Harry tightened his internal mind anchor until the warmth cooled. Then Harry did something dangerous. He lifted his hand and traced a tiny portal circle in the air, small, controlled. Only big enough for a hand. Sparks flared, and fizzled. Not because Harry failed, because something interfered. The portal seam snapped shut like it had been pinched. Harry felt a brief cold pressure behind his scar. A whisper. "Not here." Harry lowered his hand immediately. He didn't push. He didn't fight Dobby's magic with ego. Because that's how doors got you killed. Ron grabbed Harry's sleeve. What do we do? Harry's gaze flicked to the Weasley family's car parked nearby, because of course Arthur Weasley would drive a flying car and call it reasonable. Ron followed Harry's gaze and lit up with a terrible idea. No, Harry said calmly, yes. Hermione's face went white. Absolutely not. Ron was already dragging Harry toward the car like panic had chosen a direction. Dobby popped in front of them, frantic. No, no, Harry Potter must not. Harry stopped. He looked at Dobby steadily. You're trying to save me, Harry said. Dobby nodded violently, eyes shining. Yes, sir, yes. Harry leaned slightly closer. His voice stayed calm, but it carried the weight of a vow. Then listen, Harry said. If you truly want to save me, stop opening doors with fear. Dobby froze. Harry continued, quietly, tell whoever owns you that I'm not a thing to be moved. I'm not a story to be controlled. I'm not their door. Dobby's mouth trembled. Dobby will be punished. Harry didn't soften. Then survive it. And warn me again when you can. Dobby stared at Harry like no one had ever spoken to him that way. Then Dobby vanished with a sharp crack. And Ron shoved Harry into the front seat. Hermione climbed into the back muttering things that sounded like prayers and insults. The car lifted off the ground a minute later. Ari looked down at London shrinking beneath them and felt his scar warm faintly, restless. Not because of the car. Because Hogwarts was calling. And something inside him was listening. The Whomping Willow tried to murder them. That part, at least, felt familiar. The impact was brutal, metal groaning, branches slamming, Ron swearing loudly, Hermione shrieking, Harry bracing his body instinctively like Wong had taught him. When the car finally spat them out and fled like it had gained sentience and regret, Harry climbed out of the wreck with his breathing controlled and his internal anchor tight. His scar warmed in quick pulses, irritated, like the fragment disliked arriving through chaos. Harry pressed the anchor disc anyway, even though it wasn't necessary now. Habit was a kind of safety. They limped into the castle. Got scolded until McGonagall's voice went hoarse, got detention until Ron looked like he might faint, and then life snapped back into the rhythms of Hogwarts. Classes, homework, whispers, and a castle pretending nothing had happened. Except Harry could feel the wards again, heavier than last year, like Hogwarts had tightened its grip after the stone incident. The castle knew something had come close. The castle remembered. Harry remembered too. The first message appeared on a Monday. Harry was leaving potions, Snape's voice still dripping contempt, into the air, when the corridor ahead of him went silent. Students stood frozen in a half-circle, staring at the stone wall. Harry stepped forward, and felt his scar warm instantly. Not pain, recognition. On the wall, in dripping red letters, a sentence screamed like it had been carved with a blade. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware. Hermione's breath hitched beside him. Ron went pale. That's not a joke, is it? Harry stared at the words. The scar warmed stronger, like the fragment, like the idea of something old waking up. Harry tightened his internal mind anchor until the warmth dulled. Then he saw what the crowd wasn't seeing. Not just the message, the ward pressure around it. The air near the words felt thin, like something had passed through, leaving a trail. A door had opened here. Not a physical one, a metaphysical one, and someone had stepped through it. Harry's eyes flicked upward. A cat hung stiff as a board from a torch bracket. Its eyes wide and glassy. Mrs. Norris. Petrified. Hermione whispered, terrified, she's not dead, she's frozen. Ron swallowed. By what? Harry's voice was quiet. Something that doesn't need permission. His scar warmed again at that, sharp and warning. Harry pressed the anchor disc, steadying himself. Because in that moment, he understood what the Ancient One had meant. This wasn't a door with hinges. This was a door made of fear and rumor and old blood. And Hogwarts, full of secrets, was about to become a maze where people didn't just get lost. They got hunted. The next weeks were worse. Whispers became screams in miniature. Students started traveling in groups. Teachers' eyes became sharper, voices tighter. The wards felt restless again, like the castle was trying to move its own organs to protect itself. And then the attacks began. First a Hufflepuff boy found stiff in a corridor, eyes wide and empty. Then a Ravenclaw girl, collapsed near a staircase, skin cold, gaze frozen. Always petrified, never dead. But the message was clear. Someone wanted the school terrified. Harry watched the fear ripple through Hogwarts like smoke. And he felt his scar react every time, warming, pulsing, tasting the atmosphere like the fragment enjoyed the tension. Harry hated it, so he trained harder. He started walking the corridors at night und the invisibility cloak, not to chase drama, but to map the pressure lines. He couldn't portal freely inside the castle. The wards bit at his attempts like teeth. Mirror steps worked only in tiny flickers. And every flicker made his scar warm with that same hungry curiosity. So Harry didn't rely on mirror tricks. He relied on observation. He looked for patterns. Where attacks happened. Where the wards thinned. Where the castle felt like something crawled inside it. Hermione helped, eyes burning with logic even when fear tried to pull her under. Ron helped too, despite being terrified, because Ron's fear didn't make him run. It made him stubborn. One night in the library, Hermione slammed a book open and whispered, "Chamber of Secrets was a legend. A myth. Salazar Slytherin Supo. Sedley built it and left a monster to purge the school." Ron's face was pale. "Purge who?" Hermione's voice dropped. "Muggle-borns." The word landed like a curse. Harry felt his scar warm, sharp, UG. Lee, like the fragment, like the idea of purging. Harry tightened his internal anchor so hard his jaw ached. Hermione continued, "The monster is supposed to obey the heir of Slytherin." Ron swallowed. "So who's the heir?" Hermione's eyes flicked to Harry's forehead. Then away, quickly, like she was ashamed the thought existed. Harry didn't blame her. The whole school was starting to look at him like that. Because the worst thing wasn't the attacks. It was what happened in the dueling club. Lockhart strutted like a peacock, Snape looked like he wanted to kill the peacock, and the whole school packed into the room because terror loved spectacle. Harry didn't want to be there. But he went, because fear didn't get to dictate his schedule. When Draco Malfoy's spell bounced, when the snake appeared on the floor hissing and coiling, the room erupted in panic. Harry didn't move, not from bravery, from training. He watched the snake the way you watched a moving threat, distance, angle, intent. And then he heard it. Not the hiss, the meaning. Get away. Don't hurt them. Leave. Harry's stomach tightened. Parseltongue. The room went silent as Harry spoke back without thinking, calm, controlled. "Stop. Go." The snake obeyed. And the silence that followed was the worst silence of all. Because it was the silence of people deciding what story to tell about you. Whispers exploded. "Harry Potter can talk to snakes. That's dark magic. Slytherin's heir." Harry's scar warmed faintly, almost pleased, like the fragment enjoyed being mistaken for power. Harry pressed the anchor disc so hard it hurt. Hermione rushed to him after, eyes frantic. "Harry, you didn't do anything wrong. You saved." Ron grabbed Harry's sleeve like he was anchoring Harry to reality. "They're idiots." Harry's voice was quiet. "They're afraid." Hermione's jaw clenched. "So what do we do?" Harry looked at both of them and felt the truth settle cold and clear. "We find the door," Harry said. "Before it finds us." The diary came into Harry's life like a mistake. Ginny Weasley, Ron's little sister, had been quieter this year, paler, like someone had stolen her sleep. Harry noticed. Because Kamar-Taj taught him to notice the way pain hides in posture. One afternoon, Harry passed a classroom and saw Ginny on the floor, frantically stuffing something into her bag. She looked up, saw Harry, and went white. She fled. Something fell from her bag as she ran. A small, black book. Harry bent and picked it up. The moment his fingers touched the cover, his scar warmed violently. Not a normal pulse. A surge. Like the fragment inside him had lunged toward the object like a starving mouth. Harry's breath caught. He tightened his internal mind anchor instantly, locking the warmth down into a dull burn. He stared at the diary. It looked ordinary. No title. No lock. Just black leather. But the word pressure around it felt wrong. Thin. Slippery. Like ink hiding a blade. Harry's eyes narrowed. This wasn't just a book. This was a door that didn't look like a door. Harry slid the diary into his robe without thinking, safe containment, close to his anchor disc, and moved after Ginny. He found her in a corridor, hugging herself like she was cold. "Ginny," Harry said softly. She flinched so hard it hurt to watch. Her eyes darted to his forehead. To his scar. Then away. Why you, she stammered. Harry kept his voice calm. You dropped this. He held the diary out. Ginny stared at it like it was a snake. Her face drained of color. I don't. Harry's scar warmed again, angry now. Like the fragment didn't want to give the diary back. Harry tightened his internal anchor until the warmth dulled. Ginny's hands shook. She reached for the diary. Then yanked her hand back as if it burned. Harry's gaze sharpened. How long have you had it? Ginny swallowed, eyes shining with panic. I don't know. It was mine. I mean, it wasn't. Her words collapsed. Tears filled her eyes. Harry felt his chest tighten, a rare flicker of emotion slipping through his discipline, not fear, not anger. Concern. Ginny, Harry said quietly, what did it make you do? Ginny's lips trembled. Nothing. And the lie was so desperate it was almost a scream. Harry didn't push harder. He didn't corner her. He did what the Ancient One would do. He offered a hand without forcing a door open. Then let me hold it for now, Harry said. Just until we understand what it is. Ginny stared at him, terrified, guilty, pleading. Then she nodded, barely. And fled. Harry stood alone in the corridor, diary heavy in his robe, scar-warm and watchful. Hermione found him minutes later, eyes sharp. Where were you? Harry didn't answer immediately. He pulled the diary out. Hermione's eyes widened. What is that? Harry's voice was quiet and certain. A soul anchor, he said. Ron blinked. A what? Harry stared at the diary like it was staring back. The same kind of wrongness as my scar, Harry said softly. Just, cleaner, more intentional. Hermione's breath caught. You mean, it's. Harry nodded once. A Horcrux, he said. The word didn't come from a textbook this time. It came from recognition. And the moment he said it, the diary's cover felt warmer in his palm, like it liked being named. Harry's scar pulsed. Two fragments acknowledging each other. Two doors aligning. Harry tightened his internal anchor until the pulse dulled. Then he looked at Hermione and Ron. We don't write in it, Harry said. Ron swallowed. Obviously. Harry's gaze was flat. We don't even think near it for too long. Hermione nodded, swallowing hard. Then what do we do? Harry stared down the corridor as if he could see through walls. Because he could feel Hogwarts shifting again. Another door creaking. Another attack waiting. We follow where it points, Harry said. And as if the castle wanted to answer him. A scream echoed faintly through stone. High. Distant. Human. Harry's scar flared hot, like the fragment surged in excitement. Harry pressed the anchor disc and tightened his internal mind anchor until the flare became a dull, controlled burn. Then he ran. Because somewhere in the maze of Hogwarts, the monster had struck again. And Harry Potter, raised by the Ancient One, was done letting doors open. Without him understanding who was on the other side. The scream didn't echo like normal sound. It echoed like a ward line snapping. Harry felt it in his teeth before he heard it in his ears, Hogwarts enchantments tightening, shifting. Trying to close around a wound that kept opening. Students spilled into corridors like frightened birds. Prefects shouted. Professors, voices rose and fell in controlled panic. Harry ran against the flow. Ron pounded beside him, face pale but stubborn. Hermione ran with her wand raised, breathing sharp and steady like she'd practiced fear into something usable. When they reached the source, Professor McGonagall was already there, flanked by teachers, her posture rigid with rage and terror. A message was smeared across the stone again, red like old ink. Her skeleton will lie in the chamber forever. Underneath it, Ginny Weasley's name. Ron made a sound that wasn't quite a scream and wasn't quite a sob. His knees buckled for a second like his body had forgotten how to stand. Harry's scar flared hot. Not pain. Recognition. The fragment inside him surged. Door, 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 like it knew the path was opening wider. Harry tightened his internal mind anchor until the flare became a controlled burn. He pressed the anchor disc hard. Then he looked at Ron. Ron's eyes were wild. Ginny. Harry grabbed his shoulder, firm. Ron. Breathe. Ron's breath hitched. Harry didn't let go. In. Out. Ron's breath shook, then steadied, barely. Hermione's voice trembled. We have to tell someone. McGonagall's voice cut through the corridor like a blade. All students to their dormitories. Immediately. Harry stepped forward. McGonagall's eyes snapped to him, sharp. Mr. Potter, no. Harry didn't raise his voice. He didn't plead. He said the truth. It's the diary, Harry said quietly. The teachers went still. Snape's eyes narrowed. McGonagall's face tightened. What diary? Harry's scar warmed again, warning, like the fragment D. Slicked adults entering this conversation. Harry pressed the anchor disc. A black diary, Harry said. It's a soul anchor. It's controlling her. McGonagall stared at him like she didn't want to believe he could possibly know what he just said. Snape's voice was silken poison. And how, exactly, would you know what a soul anchor is? Harry met Snape's gaze without flinching. Because I have one in my head. Silence slammed down. Even Snape stopped breathing for a heartbeat. McGonagall's voice went thin. Albus needs to hear this. He's gone, Snape said coldly, like it pleased him. Summoned to the ministry hours ago. Quote. Harry's stomach tightened. A distraction. Again. The castle was being emptied of its strongest protection. A familiar pattern. Ron's voice cracked. So what do we do? McGonagall's gaze flicked to Ron, real sympathy piercing through her sternness, then hardened into command. You do what I tell you, she said. You go to your dormitories. Harry didn't move. McGonagall's eyes snapped back to him. Mr. Potter. Harry's voice stayed calm. If we wait, she dies. McGonagall's jaw clenched. Then, unexpectedly, another voice chirped up with false confidence. Ah, yes. Terrible business, this. Gilderoy Lockhart arrived in a swirl of hair and cologne, smiling like tragedy was another stage. I've been saying for months, Lockhart declared, that this is precisely the kind of thing that requires a hero. Ron turned toward him, face twisting with fury. You're not a hero. Lockhart's smile tightened. Now. McGonagall's voice was sharp enough to cut stone. Professor Lockhart, you will accompany Mr. Potter and Mr. Weasley. Lockhart blinked. I will, what? McGonagall's eyes were flint. You have been loudly claiming your competence all year. Now you will prove it. Lockhart's face went pale. Harry's scar warmed faintly, amused, hungry, like the fragment enjoyed watching fear. Harry pressed the anchor disc. Hermione grabbed Harry's sleeve, whispering urgently, Harry, you can't. Harry looked at her, not coldly. Honestly. I can, he said. But you can't come. Hermione's eyes widened. Why? Harry's voice was quiet, Parseltongue. Hermione's face tightened, furious at the unfairness. Ron's voice broke. I'm coming. Harry nodded once. Yes. McGonagall looked like she hated every second of this. But her eyes were trapped by the reality in front of her. She leaned down to Harry, voice low. If you are wrong, I'm not, Harry said. McGonagall's gaze flicked to his scar, fear and understanding colliding. Then she straightened and snapped, go. And do not, be reckless. Harry didn't promise that. He promised something better. I'll be disciplined, he said. McGonagall's lips pressed thin. Then she stepped aside, and the corridor swallowed them. Moaning Myrtle's bathroom smelled like damp stone and sadness. Myrtle floated in a toilet, sniffing dramatically. Oh, it's you again, she moaned. Come to see my death spot. Ron looked like he might throw up. Lockhart looked like he wanted to flee. Harry went straight to the sink. He felt it immediately, ward pressure around the pipes. The faint residue of something old and serpentine. A door that wasn't a door. Ron whispered, voice shaking, Ginny was here. She was acting weird. Then she left and Harry didn't answer. He put 2 fingers to his scar. Warm, tugging, pointing down. Harry breathed and tightened his internal anchor. Then he leaned toward the sink and spoke in Parseltongue. The words slid out smooth, involuntary. Like a language he'd always known. Open. The sink rattled. Stone groaned. A circular opening yawned in the floor as pipes twisted aside like obedient snakes. Ron stared. Brilliant. A murder hole. Lockhart took a step back. This is quite unhygienic. Harry grabbed a rope coil from the corner and tied it quickly, efficiently. Wong's hands had taught him knots before spells. Ron swallowed. I'll go first. Harry's eyes sharpened. No, I go first. You follow. Ron looked like he wanted to argue. He didn't. Because Ginny was down there. Harry dropped into the pipe. Cold stone slid past. The descent was long, twisting, swallowing light. Harry's scar warmed stronger with every turn, like the fragment was being pulled toward a sibling. Harry kept breathing. He hit the bottom with a thud and rolled smoothly into a crouch. Ron landed beside him a second later, coughing. Lockhart came last, yelping the whole way down. The tunnel stretched ahead, slick stone carved with serpents. The air tasted old. Not dusty old. Blood old. Harry moved forward, wand raised, but he didn't cast light immediately. He listened first. A faint whispering hiss ran through the stone itself. Like the walls were remembering language. The deeper they went, the more Harry felt the castle's wards fade. Not vanish, but thin. Like Hogwarts didn't want to admit this place belonged to it. Then they found it. The chamber. A vast hall of stone and water, statues looming, columns carved with serpents. And in the center, pale on the wet floor, Ginny. Ron made a broken sound and sprinted forward. Harry grabbed his shoulder hard and yanked him back. Ron whirled, furious. What are you? Harry's voice was low. Look. In the shadows beyond Ginny, a figure stepped forward like a memory walking. A tall boy with neat hair and a calm smile that didn't reach his eyes. Tom Riddle. Harry's scar flared like a brand. The diary was in Tom's hand, black cover gleaming. Ron stared, confused and terrified. Who are you? Tom smiled gently. I am the memory of Tom Marvolo Riddle. Harry's stomach tightened. Not a ghost. Not a simple echo. A conster. UCTED self, anchored to ink and attention. A door that drank the minds that opened it. Tom's gaze slid to Harry's forehead and lingered. You, Tom said softly, delighted. You are, very interesting. Harry pressed the anchor disc until the flare steadied. You're a Horcrux, Harry said. Tom's smile widened. Oh, you know that word. Harry didn't respond. Tom's eyes flicked to Ron and then dismissed him instantly like background noise. You, Tom said, have carried a piece of my future self inside you all this time. Ron stiffened. Future, what? Harry's voice stayed calm. Voldemort. Tom's expression sharpened into amusement. Ah, so that's what he calls himself. Harry's scar warmed in a disgusted, hungry way at the name. Harry tightened his internal anchor. Tom took a step closer to Ginny, almost tender. She poured herself into the diary. Every fear, every secret, every lonely thought. Ron looked like he wanted to lunge. Harry held him with a single look. Don't. Tom continued, and with every word. I grew stronger. Harry's eyes narrowed. You opened the chamber. Tom nodded. Of course. I am the heir of Slytherin. Ron's voice cracked. Where is she? Where is Ginny? Tom gestured lazily at Ginny's body. There. Fading. Ron's face twisted. You'll kill her. Tom's smile didn't change. If she dies, I live. Harry felt the scar pulse, two fragments resonating, like tuning forks. He hated it. He pressed the anchor disc. Tom's gaze slid to Harry, hungry now. You and I have something in common, Harry Potter. Harry's voice was flat. We both have Voldemort inside us. Tom chuckled. Crude, but accurate. Then Tom's eyes gleamed. And that means, he purred, I can use you. The whisper behind Harry's scar surged. Open. Harry's vision flickered for a heartbeat. Then Harry snapped his mind anchor tight like a lock. No, Harry said quietly. Tom tilted his head. No. Harry stepped forward one measured pace. You don't get to open me. Tom smiled as if Harry had told him a joke. Then Tom turned to Lockhart. You brought help, Tom said, polite. How thoughtful. Lockhart looked like he might faint. Now see here. Harry didn't wait. He shoved Lockhart's wand into his hand because Lockhart clearly didn't know what to do with it. Lockhart's eyes darted. Yes, well. Ron snapped, do something. Lockhart flinched and pointed his wand wildly. Obliviate. Quote. The spell hit, and rebounded. Because the wand in Lockhart's hand was not his wand. Because wands were doors too, and this door didn't recognize him. The blast slammed into the cave ceiling and ricocheted back into Lockhart. Lockhart's eyes went blank. He smiled vacantly. Hello. Ron's jaw dropped. You absolute. The chamber rumbled. Stone groaned. The entrance behind them collapsed. A wall of rock sealed them in. Ron spun toward it, panic rising. No. Harry grabbed Ron's sleeve. Breathe. Ron's breath hitched. Harry forced his own breathing steady. In. Out. The scar warmed, eager, tasting the panic. Harry tightened his internal anchor. Tom's smile widened. Perfect, he murmured. Now you can watch. He turned toward the statue of Salazar Slytherin towering over them, a giant stone face with an open mouth. Tom spoke in Parseltongue, voice sliding like oil. Harry understood every word. Speak to me, Slytherin. Command your servant. The statue's mouth cracked wider. Darkness yawned. A sound rose from within, wet, heavy, enormous. Something moved. Harry's scar flared like a beacon. The fragment inside him surged in excitement and fear. Like a starving animal hearing its own kind. Harry pressed the anchor disc hard. Then he whispered to Ron, very quietly. Don't look at its eyes. Ron swallowed. What is it? Harry's voice went cold. A basilisk. Ron went white. Those kill you by looking at you. Harry nodded once. Yes. Tom watched them with delighted curiosity. Let's see. The boy who lived can be the boy who survives twice. The basilisk emerged like a nightmare made physical, scales slick, head as big as a coffin, eyes glowing with death. Ron screamed and stumbled backward. Harry moved, not to attack, to control space. He raised his wand. Protega. A shield snapped into place, clean, stable, but the basilisk's sheer presence made the barrier vibrate. Like the creature's gaze alone was pressure. Harry shifted his stance into Kamar-Taj footwork, grounding himself. He didn't look at the basilisk's eyes. He looked at reflections. Water pooled along the chamber floor, dark, rippling mirrors. Harry used that. He angled his body so he could track the basilisk's position by the movement of water and the shimmer of its scales. He shouted to Ron, use the puddles. Watch the floor. Ron's voice trembled. That's insane. Harry's voice didn't change. Do it. Ron swallowed, then forced himself to look down, tracking the basilisk by reflection like Harry. Tom watched with narrowed eyes. Clever. The basilisk lunged. Harry stepped aside at the last second, cloak and robe snapping. He traced a quick boundary sigil with his free hand, mirror vey. Just enough to distort the basilisk's strike. Its fangs hit stone instead of Harry. The chamber shook. But Harry felt it. Hogwarts wards were thin here, and mirror space was unstable. He couldn't rely on it. One mistake and it would fracture wrong and make everything worse. Harry kept moving. Shield. Step. Redirect. The basilisk's tail whipped. Stone exploded. Ron was thrown off his feet. Harry's scar flared again. Open. Run. Do anything. Harry tightened his internal anchor until his thoughts were steel. Then, a sound like wings. A cry like sunlight. Fawkes the Phoenix burst in. The chamber in a blaze of gold and red. Tom's smile faltered for the first time. No. Fawkes dove at the basilisk's head, talons flashing, and pecked straight into its eyes. The basilisk screamed, thrashing blind. Harry felt a rush of cold relief. Not victory. Opportunity. A sword clanged onto the stone floor beside him, silver, heavy, ancient. The sword of Gryffindor. Harry stared for half a breath. Then he grabbed it. It was heavier than any weapon he'd held. But weight was honest. Weight didn't lie. Ron, panting, stared. Where did that come from? Harry didn't answer. Because the basilisk lunged again. Blind now but furious, guided by scent and sound. Harry moved forward. Not reckless. Focused. He let the basilisk commit to its strike, then pivoted aside, using the creature's momentum. He brought the sword up with both hands and drove it down. The blade sank into the basilisk's skull with a sickening crunch. The basilisk's body convulsed. Harry's arms jolted with the impact. Then, pain. A fang caught him in the forearm as the creature thrashed. Venom burned like liquid fire. Harry gasped, knees buckling. His scar flared violently, wild, hungry, panicked. For a heartbeat the whisper inside him screamed. Open, let me. Harry slammed his internal anchor shut with sheer will. No, he rasped, teeth clenched. Fawkes cried and swooped down, tears falling onto Harry's wound. Coolness spread instantly, soothing the venom's fire. The pain didn't vanish, but it became survivable. Harry's breathing steadied. Tom stared, furious now. No, because the basilisk went still. Dead. Harry yanked the sword free, panting, forearm slick with blood and phoenix tears. Ron scrambled to him. Harry, your arm. I'm fine, Harry lied. Then he looked up at Tom. Tom's expression was no longer amused. It was threatened. You were never supposed to be trained, Tom hissed. You were supposed to be fragile. Hungry. Easy. Harry's voice was hoarse. I wasn't. Tom's eyes gleamed with hate. Then I'll take your friend instead. He moved toward Ginny like a man reaching for his prize. Harry didn't chase him. Harry reached into his robe and pulled out the diary. Tom froze. His eyes locked onto it. He looked hungry, like a man seeing his own heart on someone else's palm. Harry's scar pulsed, 2 doors aligning. Harry tightened, his internal anchor until it steadied. Tom's voice turned smooth again, coaxing. Give it to me. Harry's eyes narrowed. No. Tom's smile turned sharp. You can't destroy me, Harry Potter. I'm memory. Ink. Immortal. Harry didn't argue with philosophy. He acted with certainty. He grabbed the basilisk fang embedded in the stone nearby, long, curved, dripping venom, and raised it over the diary. Tom's eyes went wide. Stop. Harry drove the fang straight through the diary. The book screamed, not in sound, in presence. A wave of cold hatred burst outward, slamming into Harry's scar like a fist. Harry's vision flashed, red eyes, green light, laughter. The fragment inside him surged, reacting violently to its sibling being torn apart. Harry's scar burned. Harry clenched his teeth and held the fang down harder. Ink poured out like blood, black and smoking. Tom Riddle's face twisted, cracking like porcelain under pressure. His voice became a shriek. You don't understand. Harry's voice was low, brutal with discipline. I understand enough. The diary's cover split. The ink bled out and evaporated into nothing. Tom's body began to unravel, edges fraying like paper burned too close to flame. He staggered backward, eyes locked on Harry's scar with venomous clarity. This isn't over, Tom hissed, voice breaking apart. He will return. And when he does, he will open you. Harry's scar flared again, furious and afraid. Harry pressed the anchor disc and tightened his internal anchor until his breath became steady. Then he said, quietly, I'm still not your door. Tom screamed one last time. And vanished. Ginny gasped, like someone surfacing from deep water. Ron lunged forward, catching her as she tried to sit up, sobbing her name like a prayer. Harry's knees finally buckled. The adrenaline drained. The ache in his arm returned. He stared at the shredded diary on the floor, smoke curling from it like the last breath of a dead thing. 2 fragments. One destroyed. One still inside him. Harry pressed 2 fingers to his scar. It was hot, but quieter, as if the fragment had been reminded it could bleed. They got out in chaos. Art wandered around cheerfully forgetting his own name. Ron carried Ginny like she was made of glass. Harry walked behind them, breathing through the shaking in his muscles, keeping his internal ancho. Art tight because the chamber still felt like a place that wanted to swallow thoughts. Fawkes returned at the end like a miracle that didn't ask permission. The phoenix grabbed Ron's robe with one claw, Harry's with another. And lifted them. Reality twisted. They emerged in Myrtle's bathroom in a burst of feathers and light. McGonagall, Snape, and a cluster of professors were already there, wands raised. Ginny collapsed into McGonagall's arms. Ron stumbled, sobbing. Harry stood very still, basilisk blood drying on his sleeves, scar warm and watchful. Snape's eyes locked onto Harry's forearm, bandaged poorly by necessity, then flicked to the scar. His expression was unreadable. McGonagall looked at Harry like she didn't know whether to scold him, hug him, or cry. Then, Dumbledore appeared in the doorway like a storm that had finally returned home. His eyes swept the room in an instant, Ginny alive, Ron shaking, Lockhart vacant, Harry bloodied. Dumbledore's gaze stopped on Harry. And for the briefest moment, the old wizard's composure cracked, relief and horror intertwined. You, Dumbledore said softly, have been very busy. Harry's voice was hoarse. It was a diary. Dumbledore's eyes sharpened. I know. Harry stared at him. How? Dumbledore's expression tightened. Because I have feared it. He stepped closer, gaze flicking to Harry's scar like it was a wound on the world. You destroyed it with basilisk venom, Dumbledore murmured. Harry nodded once. Dumbledore's voice went even quieter. Then it was what you think it was. Horcrux. The word didn't need to be spoken. It sat in the air between them like smoke. Harry's scar pulsed faintly, annoyed by how much adults understood without saying it. Harry pressed the anchor disc. Dumbledore's gaze lifted to the ceiling. As if listening to the castle finally relaxing, wards loosening, fear draining out. Then he looked back at Harry. Come, Dumbledore said softly. When you can stand. Harry's eyes narrowed. Where? Dumbledore's voice held an iron edge under the gentleness. Somewhere we can speak, he said, without walls listening. Later, in Dumbledore's office, Fawkes perched above them like a living ember. Harry sat in a chair that was too soft for his liking. He preferred stone and honesty. Dumbledore stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the grounds like he was watching time itself. Finally, he spoke. The diary was not the only one, Dumbledore said. Harry's stomach tightened. How many? Harry asked. Dumbledore's voice was heavy. Too many. Harry pressed his anchor disc until it cooled his pulse. And the one in my scar, Harry said quietly. It's one too. Dumbledore turned. For a moment, there was no twinkle in his eyes. Only exhaustion. Yes, Dumbledore said. Harry's jaw clenched. Then why do you keep treating me like a student problem? Dumbledore flinched. Then he did something rare. He bowed his head. Because, Dumbledore said softly, I have spent too long believing I could control outcomes by controlling information. Harry stared at him. Dumbledore looked up, eyes tired but honest. And because, he continued, the Ancient One told me something I did not want to understand. Harry's scar warmed faintly at the mention of her. Harry asked, careful, what? Dumbledore's voice was quiet. She said you would become a bridge. Dumbledore murmured. And bridges frighten people who depend on walls. Harry sat very still. Then he said the truth that had been sharpening inside him since year one. I'm not a bridge, Harry said. I'm a person. Dumbledore nodded slowly. Yes. Silence. Then Dumbledore raised his wand, not at Harry, not threatening, just measuring. He whispered a diagnostic charm. The air around Harry's scar shimmered faintly. Dumbledore's face tightened. It is still there, Dumbledore said. Harry's voice didn't shake. I know. Dumbledore's eyes met his. You held it back in the chamber. Dumbledore said quietly. When it would have been easy to let it surge. Harry's scar pulsed, like it hated being called weak. Harry pressed the anchor disc. I held, Harry said. That's what I do. Dumbledore's expression softened. Then he moved to his desk and opened a drawer, pulling out a small object, an old, simple ring with a dull stone. Harry's scar warmed faintly, uneasy. Dumbledore didn't offer it, he simply held it like proof. There are other anchors out there, Dumbledore said. Other doors Voldemort built. Harry stared at the ring. His voice was quiet. Then we hunt them. Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. Not alone. Harry's eyes narrowed. Not as a pawn. Dumbledore's mouth twitched, sad. Not as a pawn. Harry's scar cooled slightly. For now. Outside. The castle slept, relieved. But Harry could feel it, deep in his bones, deep in the scar. This wasn't the end of year two. It was the end of innocence. And somewhere beyond Hogwarts, Voldemort was still less than a ghost and more than nothing, still hungry for doors. Harry stood slowly, forearm aching, gaze steady. I'm going back to Kamar-Taj this summer, he said. Dumbledore nodded. Good. Harry paused at the office door. Then he asked, without turning. Does the Ancient One know about Horcruxes? Dumbledore's voice was quiet. She knows about souls, he said. And she knows about men who try to cut them into pieces. Harry's fingers tightened once. Then he left. And in the hallway, where portraits pretended not to listen, Harry pressed his anchor disc and whispered, to himself. One door closed. His scar pulsed faintly in reply. Not agreeing. Not surrendering. Just listening.